right. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Patriot Underground. Today is February 5th, 2026. Thank you so much for joining me to discover the truth beneath the surface. As always, I really do appreciate everybody out there taking the time to listen. And of course, it's time for another session with my great friend Dave from News Treason. Always great to see you, brother. An honor to welcome you. How you doing tonight?
Doing well, man. Doing well. Hi to everybody on both streams. It's always good when we get together. And I was actually just thinking as the intro was running, I'm wondering if maybe we should rename these bi-weekly series. We should call it like Dave and Patriots therapy session. I feel like that's what we do every other week. And this week's been a good one so far. So I'm feeling good.
Well, it has, and we were actually talking a little backstage about, the last maybe couple of times that we got together, we were sort of feeling like we were in a lull, kind of a holding pattern sort of a situation. We were just waiting for the next big psyops to drop. And indeed, these past couple of weeks have not disappointed, as you know. So we're gonna get into a ton of stuff tonight, folks. We're gonna do our best to cover the lion's share of everything that's been going on. And indeed, yeah, we do. We talk a lot about the the emotional, psychological, and spiritual toll and impact, really, that I guess in both a positive and a negative sense of everything that we go through, and folks really appreciate that. But as far as content, there's certainly no shortage of it. At the top of my list, of course, the Epstein revelations. No big surprises in terms of confirming what we Anons have known for a very long time, but that's really not the point. This latest release is bringing the receipts to the masses and really corroborating what we've known for such a long time that was relegated, of course, to the fringes of conspiracy theory, which now is a badge of honor to be called a conspiracy theorist. It's talk about a phrase being neutered by reality, my goodness. And here we are, and the public is, for the first time, the general public, the masses, the target audience, is being exposed to this information. And it's been amplified in some very, very interesting ways. The amount of detail that's come out has been staggering. I think it was over 3 million pages of information. And as we were just talking about, this is really but a prelude to the exposure of much darker truths that will indeed shock the world, as Q told us. Many people are saying that this is sort of a warm-up for the Wiener laptop, the activities of the Clinton Foundation, both of which, of course, are mentioned famously in Drop, I believe it's 4483 or 4484, in conjunction with Epstein and the Southern District of New York. And as it turns out, Haiti is back in the news. I saw this today that U.S. warships have been deployed there as a part of Operation Southern Spear, I think it's called, which ostensibly is to combat drug trafficking and transnational criminal networks, etc. But we certainly know what's on the horizon as it pertains to the Clinton Foundation and Haiti. So the floodgates of hell are beginning to open. I think that's really the point. And these are things that we've known about for a very long time, but of course, our source of frustration and ultimately the reason that most of us, I would venture to say all of us, got engaged on this journey was to get to this point. And we're not across the finish line, as everybody knows, but we also have to celebrate our victories and take those moments to appreciate how far we've moved the football down the field, if you want to use that analogy. So the floodgates are opening, and it's basically greasing the skids. We've got Nicki Minaj, which I know that I discussed this with Mike. I was saying to you, I didn't catch your show with him last night. I don't know if you guys talked about that, but absolutely huge. The posts that she's been putting out are about as hardcore as possible. And she's got something like 27, 28 million followers on X. And these posts have had literally millions and millions of impressions in a matter of days. So clearly she's been tapped to advance the Overton window. We also have the Super Bowl this weekend with none other than Mr. Bad Bunny performing at the halftime show. Very clear, calm, alluding to adrenochrome embedded in his stage name. I suspect that this guy has been a plant all along. Kind of curious to get your take on that. But there's also been a significant amount of discussion about the color scheme of the ad promo is looking very suspiciously like the EBS. And of course, Q gave us several drops, really referencing, I should say, the Super Bowl, perhaps most famously indicating that the fun will begin directly after and will make the event itself look like a puppy show. And additionally, we also had Trump say that he was not only going to boycott the Super Bowl, largely on account of the Big Bunny character doing the halftime show, but also, and I know you caught this because I saw you posted it, he put out a video that was teasing his pick for the winner that just so happened to cut out at 17 seconds. And so, I mean, I could just go on, but why don't we start there? And I'm very curious to hear, because you and I haven't really spoken and I haven't gotten caught up on your latest commentary. I'm curious to hear your take on this batch of files being released, the calm-laden spectacle that is looming on Sunday, no doubt, and how you would characterize where we find ourselves, I guess, in the macro sense right now of the public awakening, the trajectory of the operation, as I call it.
Yeah, man, great way to tee it up. Listen, I was making the analogy last night to my king that, and you said it perfectly. It's important to recognize kind of where we are versus where we came from, and recognize the progress that's been made. Because look, we're now into going into year 9 of the Q operation, depending on where you started, year 11 of the Trump era.
Right.
And it's been a long run for people who are following the Q operation. And the analogy I was making last night is, everyone is constantly, not everyone, but a lot of people are still constantly looking for the big event, right? They're focusing on what is that one thing, that one event where I'm going to get vindicated and I'm not going to be crazy anymore and it's all going to be over.
Right.
And again, with all due respect to those people, after years of doing this, I just don't see that's the way it's going to work. Nonetheless, that doesn't mean that we haven't achieved incredible things. And the analogy I was using to Mike, it's the equivalent of going to a baseball game, and we sit there and we go to a baseball game and I'm screaming at you the whole time. It's the 9th inning. I'm like, I haven't seen a home run. I haven't seen a home run. You're like, yeah, but we're up 10-0. We're about to win. Yeah. Meaning you're waiting for that moment where everyone stands up because the ball goes over the fence. But meanwhile, you've had a bunch of singles and you're winning the game 10-0. And that's kind of what that's the analogy I would use for what we're living through right now. And there's so many different things. And let's take this Epstein thing. As you said, it's been a long haul on this, but now you have to go back and look at exactly the brilliance of how they laid this thing out. This started really in earnest back in the May-June timeframe, where, out of the blue, I think it was like a Tuesday afternoon, Trump's in a cabinet meeting and he goes, Epstein, the hell are we talking about Epstein for? We got all this other good stuff going on. Like, it broke the internet.
Yeah.
And then they meticulously spent the next 7 months guiding the seagrass back and forth, right? The Republicans were against it during one bill, and then the Democrats were against it in another bill. And meanwhile, they're dropping stuff out there on both sides, right? Brilliantly executed, because Donald Trump told you he's going to take the slings and arrows. And what he understood, or whoever wrote that drop understood, that if the Epstein files were being put out there by Trump and co. as a completely right-favoring narrative, right? Only Democrats, only bad Hollywood people. Well, the people on the left would have rejected the whole thing.
So true.
Consequently, if they put it all left-leaning, we would have been there. All right, yeah, we. In other words, it had to be done in a way where both sides were engaged, and they forced everybody for 7 months, over and over, on television, on social media, in the office, at the water cooler, wherever, to debate this. Probably some of the debates weren't fun. People are getting mad at each other. No, Trump's in it. He's not in it. I hate you. Let's not talk. Yep. But that achieves full attention. And it got both sides to pay attention. And then, I remind everybody that this all came about because you had both sides. They showed us both sides, the Republicans and Democrats, trying to block this stuff from coming out, because we know there's a lot of them implicated in it. And then all of a sudden, around Thanksgiving, the House votes 434-1 to release it with full transparency. Now, make that make sense, right?
Yeah.
But what did that show? That showed the people. Unity, right? No one could say it was a Republican-led release. It was a Democrat. No, we're going to give you unity. We're going to put it out there. No one can question it. And then the way that they deployed this over the weekend, again, out of nowhere, just like all of a sudden, here's 3 million more pages, and that was enough to get a whole bunch of attention. And there's a lot of misinformation in there that we're still going to have to get through. We could talk about that. I would also point out, I don't think any of the real juicy stuff is in that release yet, because if they're under 600,000 sealed indictments, we haven't seen anything yet.
Yep.
But
so
then
true.
you bring in the closer. You bring in Nicki Minaj, who was famously sitting there with Trump the week before, wearing the Q yellow dress and the white fur coat, much like a white rabbit.
That's right. Yeah, she did have a
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And she comes in on a Sunday night or Monday morning, whatever it was, and just starts carpet bombing her 26 million people with truth about adrenochrome and eating babies and all these terrible things that we knew to be true. And that brings in Pizzagate again. And now all of a sudden, Pizzagate, which was a right-wing conspiracy theory for the better part of a decade, has gone mainstream. And we have some stuff we can show you guys to prove that. So it's incredible to see how that, when you really back up and see how this was planned. Again, that you have to sit there and you can wait for the home run, but make sure you're paying attention to all the other runs that are coming across the plate throughout the game. And I would say we scored about 17 of them this week in deploying this. And if I could, Patriot, I want to share one thing with the audience who may have seen this on the roundtable today, but I very often try to, in the course of my podcast, share different stories that I personally experienced going out, dealing with normies, hearing the other conversations I hear, or talking to people about what we see on X. And I understand if you don't spend a lot of time scrolling X, if you sit there and read 500 X posts in a day, you kind of get a sense, right? You feel where the tides are going. Yeah.
Right.
If you don't do that, it's very hard to convey that to people on a podcast. My point being, I could understand if some people may look at what I say skeptically, because probably if I was in the audience and my husband wasn't talking to me for 5 years, I would probably be skeptical about that as well. But I have just one example today of, two examples. One, as I mentioned on the show today, I was sitting having dinner last night, and two of my, relatively normie friends were looking at memes and laughing and explaining to each other how they were all posting memes that said, "It's time to apologize for your conspiracy theorist friends."
Yes.
Because they had seen what was going on with Epstein and Pizzagate. And these are not anons, right? And then today, if you could throw that dark screenshot up on the screen, this is from Joe Rambo's roundtable, Jules Patriot, who I've seen in all these chats before. And she said, "My daughter hasn't spoken to me in 3 years. And she called me yesterday apologizing for thinking I was nuts, but now believes it after seeing the Nicki post." And
Wow.
I will read to you another email that I got just an hour ago. I won't name the name, just out of for privacy. But somebody said, "Hey, Dave, I wanted to share a quick story. I work in a restaurant and I'm known as a resident conspiracy theorist. Today, a normie liberal came to me and said," I won't say her name, quote, "What I'm seeing in these Epstein files have me really shaken. What is your opinion?" I told her I've known about the sick, evil stuff. Keep in mind, this is a liberal. "I've known about the sick, evil stuff for a while, and it's still hard to read some of it. I could tell she believes what she's reading, and she's horrified. I let her know there's so much more to come and to get ready. Later, I went to her and I said, I'm not going to tell you something about Trump, and I don't want you to think it's only because I support him, but he was an informant." And I showed her the video of the lawyer saying he was the only person who cooperated, and she was very willing to listen to me. This made my day. Those are just two examples today showing you the impact that this is having. So those of you that are, don't believe people when they say that, people are starting to come around, they're starting to come around.
Well, I keep waiting for something like that to happen to me. And I'll tell you, the moment it does, I'm going to run on and do a live stream talking about it. But yeah, that's huge. And, the first thing that popped into my mind when we were just reading that post by Jules Patriot was, isn't it amazing how the people that love you and ultimately trust you and believe in you in basically every other context would take your word over somebody else's? But it takes a but for something like this earth-shatteringly horrific information that we've tried so earnestly to share with all of our friends and our neighbors and our and particularly our families, how it just fell completely on deaf ears. But then the minute Nicki Minaj comes out and
Right.
starts posting about it, somebody that they just happen to look up to as a celebrity, all of a sudden that all that willingness, it's like a light switch just goes off and they're like, you know, wow, maybe there's actually something there. And it never ceases to amaze me, that dynamic. And it really does speak to the way that the public, it really the normie mindset in general, but the way that the public has been conditioned to reject outright anything that threatens their worldview from people that they're close to, but yet these distant figures, these celebrities, these people that they, I mean, especially somebody like Nicki Minaj, it's like, nobody is, I don't think, making the case that she has this great knowledge about political dynamics and geopolitics and so forth. Like she's just an entertainer, and yet those tweets have a seismic impact on people. It's baffling to me. I mean,
Yeah.
I get it, but there's still a part of me that just I have such a difficult time wrapping my brain around it. Love to hear
You
your
know,
thoughts.
it's so funny you say that because I've been giving that a lot of thought, and you're absolutely right. And you know what I could best, the best analogy I could give on that one, it's something I'm surprised didn't dawn on me earlier when I first started trying to tell people about this stuff. You and I are about the same age, in our 40s, and so we're old enough to have had those moments where something happens and you're like, ah, holy crap, my mother was right about that, or my dad was right about that, right? Where it's stuff when you were younger,
Mhm,
like they tried to tell you stuff, and it wasn't until you grew up on your own and you went out and experienced it, you're like, oh my God, they were right. So there's something similar that happens there. I think there's a point at which, th- where it's the same person trying to give the message over and over again, and they just tune it out. Part cognitive dissonance, part uh, anti-confirmation bias. I don't know what the right term for it is, but you're right. Then when it's somebody else, and in this case, something that went viral online, the light bulb goes on. But again, I think that's the psychology that Q understood when Q made
yes.
that famous post. You can't tell the people, you have to show them.
Mhm,
That's
yep,
exactly it. And
yeah,
that Nicki Minaj thing, just caused like Mike King called me, call or texted me, or called me when that happened on Monday night. He's like, Nicki Minaj just broke the internet, and he
yeah.
was right. It's been
Yeah, we were
nonstop.
talking about it on the show, yeah. He
Yeah.
hadn't heard about it, and I pulled it up, and he was like, "Holy crap," "How many views did that get?" And I had to pull it back up, and I could tell that, because when we initially started our conversation, Mike was like, "Well, I think it's good, it's the latest batch of information, and, I mean, it's not gonna have any major seismic impact until the dark stuff comes out." And so, we kind of we started the conversation there, and eventually I brought up Nicki Minaj, and he immediately latched onto that and could see the incredible significance of it, recognizing, of course, that this is just yet another example of Trump using one of his proxies, and in order to amplify narratives, in order to get information out there. And you're absolutely right. And I've basically said the same thing this entire time, that the genius of this operation is inherently, even though it's kind of a tough pill for us to swallow as anons, is that they didn't approach the disclosure in the way that we would have, and the way that we anticipated or thought that would be the best way to do it. Like, just go ahead and rip the band-aid off, dump the truth all over everyone, or, just get on mainstream media and flip the switch and have them start immediately telling the truth and red pill everyone. The fact that they didn't go that route, and the fact that they knew so well and understood the dynamic of the target audience and their psychology, is exactly what's making this so effective. So, I mean, it's a source of frustration for me, and I'm sure for a lot of people out there. And I can imagine, for Jules Patriot as well, there's probably some element of like, man, I can't believe it took Nicki Minaj to actually get my daughter to talk to me and think that I wasn't crazy. But ultimately, what's this all about? It's all about the effectiveness of the operation. We've talked about this in multiple different contexts. It's not about uh, adhering to a certain set of guidelines or moral standards as we would outline them, that the white hats have to, abide by these rules. It's really all about what is going to be the most effective. That's the way the military thinks. They don't think in terms of people's sensibilities. They just
Yep.
think in terms of, okay, what's gonna be the most effective way to get people to not only be exposed to this information, but be willing to actually process it. And for somebody like Nicki Minaj, I have to say, man, I don't want to dwell on her for very long, but I was completely stunned because when you listen to her music and you're like, whoa, I mean, this does not seem like a person who well, let's just put it this way. It seems more like a defection than anything else. Like when I listened to her music, I was like, man, it seems like she's just as sick and depraved as all the rest of them. But it's just yet another example of the brilliant camo that they're using in order to catch people off guard. Because I have to imagine that I mean, Nicki Minaj came out and she was in support of Trump. It was kind of a slow build up to this where she was talking about the slaughter of Christians in Nigeria, and that was kind of her cause celeb issue. But I have to assume that nobody really saw this coming, that she was going to come out and make these hardcore posts about eating children and all of these horrific satanic ritual abuse details the way that she did. So truly amazing. But it really does. It speaks to the genius of the plan. And one of the other things that you mentioned that I think is so true is that the idea of, or I think you alluded to it, the fact that Trump has to remain neutral in this whole process, and the way that they've played this out is to engage people on both different sides of the aisle. Like they couldn't just present it as, well, okay, now Trump's back in office. He's just going to open up the Epstein files and start rounding people up. The optics of that would have been completely counterproductive. And the way that, like, I like the way you describe that, like they've been directing the seagrass on both sides. And it reminds me of drop. I think it was like one of the first 10 drops, might have been like drop 3 or 4, where Q tells us that something to the effect of POTUS is not going to be addressing the nation and
Right.
needs to remain optical. It needs to remain neutral for optical reasons or something like
Yep.
that. So
Yep.
here
That's
we are.
exactly right.
Here we are.
And one other thing I want to add, I think what you're seeing or what you've seen so far with this, the entire Epstein release, this new release, and the Pizzagate narrative is exactly what Q talks about. I want to just quickly revisit this because I know we have a lot of new people on all channels. There's a lot of people that may not understand. I realize sometimes we say stuff that's very obvious to us, and I don't give people the context of where it came from, right?
Mm.
So Q told us, all these fancy graphics we make with the arrows pointing to the drops, right? Like that's not something that Anon's just decided to do. Q told you in a number of different drops, graphics are important, and the Q coached people on how to do that. Q also coached people that it was important to archive and organize their material. Now, why do I say that? Because what you've seen is all the different stuff, whether it be Ben Swan from 2018 going viral, or any of these different things relating to Pizzagate, stuff that we were circulating 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago are now instantly going viral. And
Yes.
the reason I bring that up is because I want people to understand nothing we've gone through is going to go to waste. So very often when like we got through the Biden administration and there was people like, well, my whole family, they still didn't wake up, so it didn't work. We're not done with that stuff yet. All the different material, whether it be Merrick Garland doing something illegal, or whether it be Biden saying something about the winter of death, right? All that stuff was put there, and if it didn't wake people at that time, we have it all archived, and it's going to get used again
Gonna get
as that
reset.
stuff comes around. So you know, you can't judge the operation on any of these different psyops and things we've gone through yet, because look, even going back to COVID, you think we're done with all those clips? Hell no. You think we're done with the governors, and you think we're done with the different doctors and the media telling you lies? Absolutely not. That stuff will all still go to use. And Patriot, if I could read one drop for you, for everybody.
Oh yeah,
that black one down there. This is drop 4509. This is published on 6/24 of 2020. So just to give people who may not have read the drops yet a good example of, you know, how everybody ended up doing what they're doing and why this stuff is so important, why it works, why everything that Patriot just described about the organization, the execution, is able to work, because they know what they have on the digital battlefield right now. They know exactly if when they know when they get Nicki Minaj to put that out, that we have all these weapons in our chambers ready to go, and they know the clips that are going to start to go viral again because they've already been out there. So this is drop 4509, June 24th of 2020. And Q writes, "You've been selected to help serve your country. Never retreat from the battlefield, Twitter, Facebook, etc. Use other platforms as a form of centralized command and control." Think about Telegram and things like that, right? "Organize and connect, bridge through linking. Source memes material from the battlefield and or garage, highlight and share, take and drop," meaning save everything. Mission 1, dispute, reject the propaganda push through the posting of research and facts. Mission 2, support the role of other digital soldiers. One falls, another stands, rises. Mission 3, guide and awaken others through the use of facts. D-class 1 through 99 material and other relevant facts and memes. Decouple the MSDNC control of info stream. Ask counter questions to initiate thought versus repeat of propaganda. That's an important right there. They're telling you, they're teaching the Socratic method. They're saying, don't jam something down people's throats. Ask people counter questions. Mission 4, learn the use of camouflage digitally. Primary account suspended and terminated, use of secondary. Basically, they're telling you, have a SOC account, have backup accounts ready to go if you get nuked off one of these platforms. Mission 5, identify the strengths and weaknesses, personal and designated targets, RE, Twitter, and Facebook. Other example, RE memes, failure to read through, use of algorithm, think Tron, MCP. Okay, basically it's telling you, come up with your superpower. Everybody's got a different superpower. You know, somebody like Matrix Code Raider, Stormy, Patriot Joe, they're really good with the decodes. Joe Rambo's good with the clips, etc. They were teaching you, like, find your niche in this, because everyone's got different talents. Finishes up, game theory, information warfare. Welcome to the digital battlefield. Together we win.
Yeah. Wow.
So,
yeah. Reading that, listening to you read to that, it kind of comes across as like a training manual for Anons. I think that's really what it is, in a sense, kind of the boot camp for digital warfare. Amazing. Absolutely incredible. Yeah. And it's true what you said about all of this stuff that's going to get recycled, if you will, and go viral once again. It's just yet another example of, as the operation is playing out in real time, there's always that lag before future eventually proves past. And that's the way that it's continued to play out over and over and over again. And quite honestly, it took me a while to finally get to that point where I just had to accept that, because my instinct was initially to try to war game everything that's happening in real time and see where it was going to go, and like make all of these projections and speculate about how this could go and how that could go. And, at some level, folks appreciated that and they gained something from it. But what I came to realize ultimately was it was just wasted energy. It was a mental exercise that I was going through. But if you allow the events to just simply play out, and you approach your analysis that way, as opposed to, trying to front load your audience with all of this analysis about what's happening in real time, it tends to be much more effective. And over the course of years, we've seen that pattern continue to play out over and over and over again. Yep. So, it really is the genius of this operation. They're going to be writing about it for thousands and thousands of years. And my goodness, man, sometimes I have to pinch myself and be like, am I really a part of this? Even in a small way, like that I have a role to play. It's truly incredible. But all right, well, let's talk. I mean, I know I mentioned the Super Bowl, and I wanted to just to kind of get your sense for the color coordination there. I mean, we've been talking a lot about 2026 as it kind of feels different. Everything is starting to feel not like we're gonna necessarily be done with this entire process this year, but it's something about the way that the events are playing out, and the fact that we're approaching the 250th anniversary, and we've seen the ratcheting up of the tensions on basically every front. Uh, it feels as if we might be kind of at a point where, like, we're starting to live out, the in real time, the drops that were, back in the beginning, like from 2017 and 2018, especially. Now, there's been a lot of, and I mentioned this when I was doing my opening there, that the color coordination between the logo and the emergency broadcast. I know Stormy did a great decode on that. Um, and we can always anticipate there's gonna be a whole bunch of comms, certainly at the halftime show. We've seen that play out multiple different times, even going back to the Olympics a couple of years ago. Um, but the other thing is that I have seen people have been saying that this is the first time that the Super Bowl is going to be uh, televised all over the world. And when I first saw that, I was like, "Really? I didn't know that." Like, that seems pretty amazing if this is the first time in history that it's going to air in literally every country. And then I went and I fact checked that, and I found that that was actually not the case. That it's been that there may be a couple of more countries added on this year, but not all that different from what we've seen in years past. And even going back to like the 90s, they've been televising it in many different countries around the world. So um, I guess my question is sort of loosely based. We've got the Big Bunny character who's doing the halftime show, the connection to adrenochrome. This is timed very well, seemingly, with the Epstein files release. What are your thoughts on the Super Bowl, and just kind of like, I mean, are you just sort of taking a let's wait and see attitude? Are you really looking for anything in particular? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, I think first of all, there's a very, very clear pop culture psyop being deployed here, as you mentioned, with the whole Bad Bunny thing going on. That none of that is by coincidence. They set the guy up by having him host Saturday Night Live. And again, I don't know if he's an actor, if he's a white hat. He could just be an asshole, pardon my language, that they're using as a useful idiot. Doesn't matter. The net result still stays the same. He went on SNL on October 4th, and he gave a monologue in Spanish that had some not so favorable things to say. And then he finished up by saying, if you didn't understand that, then you have, 4 months to learn Spanish. And everyone's like, who is this guy telling us we got to learn to speak Spanish? He's in our country. So it's caught. And when you understand the demographic of the NFL fan, it's fairly America first, right? You're going to have people in cities, but the bulk of the country that are football fans are your typical blue collar, red blooded American. They don't relate
Yeah.
to Bad Bunny. And what you've seen, we were talking about this with Mike last night, is you've seen backlash. You've seen Roger Goodell being forced to stand up there and defend this guy. He actually went up there. I won't play the video, but he actually went up there and said, we're looking for people that are unify the country. This guy's going to unify it's so insultingly dumb that it has to be some kind of psyop. And I don't need to dissect what it is, because again, the net effect is the same. Right. So I absolutely expect to see something out of the halftime show. I'll remind everybody it was last year when, oh my God, remind me the guy that did the Super Bowl last year. Why am I blanking right now? Kendrick Lamar.
Oh yeah, Kendrick Lamar. Yeah,
Kendrick Lamar did the halftime show. He did
that there's
song.
The game over at the end. I remember that.
Yeah, they did. He did the song. I don't know the exact title, but the middle of it is they not like us. It's an anti-pedophile song. And in fact, in the middle of it, he calls out Drake as being a pedophile.
That's right.
And we all highlighted that last year, because you have to understand, if the cabal still controlled the halftime show, and again, that's the halftime show is nothing gets winged in the halftime show. They practice that for like weeks beforehand. The lighting, the pyrotechnics, everything. So that 100% was in that halftime show well before that happened. So you have to ask yourself how that got in there. And the song finished, and it famously, they panned back, and in the crowd in lights, it read "Game Over."
Right.
Pedophile song, game over. Think where we sit in 2026. That was white hat messaging. Now, what we're going to get this year, I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if they take it the other way and he does something really outlandish as this Epstein stuff is happening. I have a feeling we'll probably see maybe something along those lines. But, you know, if I could, Petra, I kind of want to connect this, if I'm not jumping ahead here, to China, Taiwan, and the Olympics.
Okay, yeah, I was actually going to get into that a little bit later, but yeah, let's do it.
All right.
You want to pull that graphic up?
Throw up the video. I want to go back to January 27th. So just you know, a week ago. I think it says "she generals" in the video right there. Because I caught my attention when I started seeing this, that maybe we might start seeing more about China and Taiwan.
Okay, it's the one with Trump video, right?
Nope, it should say "she" on the bottom of it.
This one?
Nope.
Oh, wait a minute. I didn't scroll down and I didn't see there were more.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay.
Political implications of the shakeup in China's military. We reported on this last night on Special Report. This evening, Chief National Security Correspondent Jennifer Griffin talked with former National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan.
Another sign of warming relations between China and Russia. The Chinese defense minister called his Russian counterpart and offered to enhance strategic coordination with Moscow, just days after it was announced China's President Xi fired his two top generals, including General Zhang Shuxi.
His removal is an absolutely seismic event. And the result of all of this is that the Central Military Commission of China now has one member left, and it's a political commissar. The cupboard is bare at the senior leadership of the People's Liberation Army right now.
Former National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan is the only U.S. official to have met General Zhang in recent years.
What does it mean for Taiwan when you remove all of your senior generals and you're left with one basically political hack in your Central Military Commission? It's pretty hard to plan, organize, and execute a massive military operation like an attack on Taiwan. There are others who say we shouldn't rest too easy because if Xi wanted, post all of this purging, to take an action, he has exercised that muscle enough to be able to do it.
Some say President Xi is removing any generals who might oppose his goal of retaking Taiwan by 2027.
Perhaps General Zhang and some of these other purged leaders didn't agree with that, and they understand the complexities of trying to do an invasion force across the 100-mile wide Taiwan Strait, which military experts say is a very, very difficult operation.
Others argue that the corruption that emerged from China's unchecked defense spending is at the root of the purge, a cautionary warning about huge defense budgets spent too quickly in an effort to modernize.
Interesting. Okay.
So that jumped out at me right away last week. Kind of out of the blue, it started popping up again. And, you know, as you saw in the video, she's purging generals. They're saying, you know, he still has a goal of taking back Taiwan by 2027. Well, you know, for anybody not paying attention, we're into 2026 already. So it doesn't leave a whole lot of time left. So I've been keeping my eye on that. And if you could go to the slides now, it should say slides 127. Trump's image should be on there with a Q drop. Yep. So these got a little jumbled out of order, but bear with me. You mentioned this before. I've also had my eye, Patriot, as I know you have, since we got that Verizon outage a couple weeks ago. You know, you had General Flynn out there seeding things about cyber attacks and outages. A lot of interesting things going on. And, you know, it was Ripcord put this together today. You had mentioned that clip. I don't need to play it, but basically it's actually, let me see if I have it here. If you want to play it, Patriot, I don't know if people have seen this yet or not.
Sure. I mean, it's
go ahead. Seconds. It says Trump Super Bowl. It should be on the right there.
Yep, got it.
Feeling this is going to be a great Super Bowl. I've watched all season. I've seen these two teams just win, win, win. And I see two great quarterbacks, young, great quarterbacks. It's going to be a fantastic Super Bowl, and everybody wants to hear who I pick. And I'll tell you what.
I love it.
So it that is, and by the way, that's TikTok, but that's not a random TikTok account. That is President Trump's actual TikTok account.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually cut off just at the end of the 17-second mark. It went black.
Yep.
As he was in the middle of a sentence. Weird, right? So if you can go back to the slides, Patriot, please.
Sure.
So, Ripcord caught it. He was thinking of that drop on November 2nd, 2017. Should the lights go out, please know we're in control. So I had that in the back of my mind. And obviously you mentioned this before. We've had the people have noticed the logo of the Super Bowl is the same colors as the EBS test pattern. Don't forget last week, while Donald Trump was speaking in Iowa in the middle of the broadcast, the test pattern came out and we got the tone. Mm-hmm. And what I'm showing here is that happened exactly 4:37 p.m. Central Time. Well, for Q purposes, we convert that to Eastern, which is 5:37. That's 17:37 military. What do you get? Device test.
Wow.
And now since then, there have been some other ones. One, I believe, was in one of the nationally televised basketball games the other day. So between the Verizon outage and Flynn going, hey, look at this thing about cyber outages, we got to watch out. And then this happens and Trump, I don't know when, how, if, but the point is that this is far beyond coincidence at this point, that there's enough of this stuff that is not accidental, that at the very least, they want our eyes thinking something with EBS, with cyber outage, when and how, I got no idea. But
yeah.
This is the other one that was interesting, going back to Xi. Ripcord noticed this at this morning or yesterday. Trump posts on True Social regarding his phone call with President Xi of China at 10:38 a.m. And if you look at post 10:38, what do you get? Booms en route. Q plus, rig for silent, chatter. I thought that was interesting as well. Mm. And then just to round it out, this was the headline today, I believe. Yesterday, excuse me. China's Xi reasserts Taiwan stance in call with Trump while U.S. president pushes trade. Beijing appeared to be reminding Washington where the red lines are with Taiwan. And it goes on to say, Beijing's statement, however, signaled out Taiwan as the most important issue in bilateral relations, urging the U.S. to handle the issue of arms sales to Taiwan with prudence. China maintains Taiwan is part of its territory, claims that have been rejected by the democratically governed island. So, what starts this weekend? The Olympics, right?
Is it this weekend?
Starts this weekend.
Wow, okay.
Play that clip at the bottom from Trump. Let's go back to January 29th of 2022, 4 years ago. Listen to what Trump said about China and Taiwan 4 years ago.
After the Olympics, I'm a good predictor. Watch what happens right after the Olympics with Taiwan and China.
We all remember that.
Yeah. It never happens, but he never said which Olympics.
Yeah.
And now just to round this out, if you could put my slides up one more time, I just wanted to look up when the closing date of the Olympics is. It's February 22nd. Look at some of the deltas for the 22nd. Well, we keep talking about the drop that says we're going to make the Super Bowl look like a puppy bowl. One of the drops for the 22nd is Robert Kraft with the Super Bowl trophy. You also have Hillary Clinton and Foundation, crimes against children. You also have sedition, treason, crimes against humanity. So I'm just pointing out the connections, not necessarily making any predictions. But yeah, Patriot, my long answer to the Super Bowl question. Sorry, I know I went off on a little bit of a tangent.
That's great, man. That was great.
I certainly expect to see something in the way of comms, especially like you said, the fact that Trump's not going to be there. He's not that petty, right? He would go just to make an appearance. So him not being there and all the different stuff around Bad Bunny, probably see something wacky going on there. And let's see what happens with the Olympics and with this China and Taiwan narrative, because, just add that to the list of on top of Epstein and Pizzagate and the Clintons and Russiagate and everything else coming to a head. Well, let's throw China and Iran. Let's throw China and Taiwan into the mix as well.
Yeah. Well, and that's really what you just kind of broke down was what I was alluding to by saying that this year kind of has that different feel to it. We're
Hmm.
starting to, I mean, we've been here before, obviously we've experienced many deltas. We've begun new years and we've speculated about the direction that things are going to go, but there's just something about 2026 that feels quite a bit different. And a lot of the stuff that you laid out there, um, kind of proves my point. Now, and I will say this though, I mean, you always see that sort of sensationalism that people put out there on social media about. I mean, Q did tell us that the fun begins directly after the Super Bowl, and you've got the EBS color scheme and all that stuff. But I think we've all learned by now that the White Hats would never, they're not going to call their shots like that. Like they're not going to,
Hmm.
to basically let everybody know, oh yeah, during the Super Bowl we're going to have an EBS, and it's like people go down that road of getting their hopes up, thinking that just because we see these comms being put out, that this is necessarily going to be the moment. We'd all love to be wrong about that, but I think the smart money is. Exactly what you just said, to continue to look for signs and indications, and they've certainly been laying them on pretty thick in the
Right.
last several weeks. And I remember during our last conversation, we had briefly talked about the geopolitical stage, and we had kind of both agreed that this, going back to the fake Biden era, and specifically the end of like mid to end of 2024, leading up to the election, there was like constantly Trump was playing Nessun Dorma at all of his rallies. We were getting into the sum of all fears, and then for a while there, that seemed to kind of go on the back burner. And you and I had both said that it seemed the last time we spoke, when the big focal point was Minneapolis and ICE and everything that was going on there, that the powder keg is right here at home domestically. And one of the things I had said is that it seems like if there's going to be some sort of an international event, let's just say, that's going to be a la Sum of All Fears, World War III scare, call it what you want, precipice type of thing, that it would seem much more likely that it would emanate out of China, because Putin and Trump are like besties and they can't even hide it. And basically everything that Trump says, Putin pretty much agrees with. But China has taken a very different stance. I mean, he seems to be a lot more opposed to the moves that Trump is making, specifically, with regard to uh, consolidating power in the Western Hemisphere, the Don Road Doctrine and annexing Greenland and all that sort of stuff, where Putin is basically saying, "Yeah, have at it," and Xi is taking a different approach. And that's one of the things that I've kind of wondered about as far as his military generals, because I've heard conflicting reports on this. Some people have said that the purge, which by the way, I believe this is all replay again, just like everything
Hmm.
else. This is all stuff that already happened years ago, and now this is the public rollout. But putting that aside for the moment, that those generals, some are saying that those generals were ones who were actually pushing for the invasion of Taiwan. They were really very much on board with that. Others have said that they were just the opposite, like that they were kind of opposed to this whole idea. But I do find it very interesting that it seems like Xi has just consolidated all of his power, and it would seem to set the stage for some sort of a unilateral maneuver to retake Taiwan. And much like Venezuela was a thorn in the side, it was a cabal hotspot, it was a thorn in the side of the U.S. In the same way that Ukraine has been for Russia, Taiwan really falls into that category for China. So if you're looking at that, uh, triumvirate of Putin, Xi, and Trump working together, uh, it would seem it would seem pretty logical that at a certain point we're going to see some sort of an international conflagration as far as Taiwan is concerned. So I don't know. We'll have to see.
I think so. I think your initial point is also really important. Just reminding people not to have expectations. Like, yeah, I go through all those comms, and I have to repeat myself and say, please don't go around. I am not some of these
Dave
other
said
tricks.
this. Dave said
Yeah,
no.
Dave said that. No, I didn't. No, I'm showing you. You know, it's like when you watch a sports game and they're like, you know, the last 10 times these guys have played, this guy scored a goal. And statistically, you know what that means for the next game? Absolutely nothing. It's a data point. If it happens, now it's 11 games. If it doesn't, you go on about your day.
Yeah.
So, you know, I look at all those things and I'm like, all right, cool. Now I'm going to go watch the game and have a beer. Yeah. And if something happens, cool. If it doesn't, cool. We keep going.
Right.
The expectations that, you know, I always see people saying I'm waiting.
Waiting?
Do we even know? Yeah. Do people even know what they're waiting for? Like, what exactly are you waiting for? You know, Pizzagate to be talked about by 100 million people? Check. You know, I'm not going to go down the line, right? That's the point. Like, do people even know exactly what they're waiting for? And then if you're waiting for something personal, like, can you actually identify what in this operation would satisfy your personal need? Because I'd be honest, it's probably not that easy to say. Don't miss all the other stuff that's going on, and stop waiting and just try to take some solace. I understand everyone's in difficult situations, and a lot are in a much worse situation than me. But you're going to drive yourself insane if you don't learn to try to take some positivity out of all this stuff that we're seeing. Yeah. And yeah, dude, as far as China and Taiwan, like, I don't know, man. I'm at the point, I don't know. Once again, to go right directly back to this conversation, I don't know if there needs to be an EBS and a scare event. I don't know. I'm not in that room. Could I see one happening? Yes. Could I see one not happening and us just skipping right ahead to, look, the whole election was fraudulent in 2020? I could see it going either way. But yeah, I would agree with you on the China and Taiwan thing. I just don't see how any of this, why this would be any different than anything we've seen out of Venezuela or Israel or Iran or Cuba or anywhere else. This is just the great replay, the soft repeat D-class for everyone to see. And if you need any more evidence of that, you have to just ask yourself, like, if she was actually still planning on going in and taking back Taiwan, there would never have been a better 4-year period to do it than when, quote unquote, Biden was in office.
Right.
And nothing. So,
and that very well may have been when it actually did happen. You know,
that would be my guess, man. That would be my guess. It's very easy to hide something happening when it's taking place 8,000 miles on the other side of this, whatever shape Earth we're on. It's very easy to hide stuff coming out of China and Taiwan. Very easy.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree. Well, before we move on to a different subject, we kind of have to talk about this Bill Maher clip. You've had it queued up there, and I actually just saw it maybe about an hour or so before we got on here. And I was we were texting a little bit before the show, and I was like, man, this is just absolute gold. Bill Maher, for those of you guys, we're going to play the clip in a moment, but Mr. Kid Love Productions himself, who of course was highlighted in the Q drops in the wake of this latest release, this tranche of information that was given to all of us back. What was it? It was like last Saturday. It was over the weekend. Just to kind of show you, I mean, we've also talked about the Nicki Minaj effect and everything else, but just to show you the way that this has been amplified, and it's something it can't be overstated in terms of importance. And this really it's an information dissemination operation. And for somebody like Bill Maher to say what he said in this clip is truly incredible. So why don't we just go ahead and watch it, and we'll talk about it.
Yeah. I'm saying this, but where does QAnon go for the apology? You know, I mean, QAnon, which believed in lots of really ridiculous things, like, you know, Democrats eat babies. Yeah. But they were kind of harping a lot on the idea that the elites are running this pedophile ring. And I mean, I made jokes about them. I also made jokes after the Epstein thing happened originally that were on the idea of, well, you know, obviously there was some smoke there. Well, now with all that's come out in the last couple of weeks, there's a little more than smoke. It does look like anybody who was at all able to get in touch with Jeffrey Epstein, he was the man.
We're doing it.
They just, yeah. I mean, and then they all lied about it. Everybody has, and the arrogance also of thinking they could just use their real name in an email, which they did, and didn't try to couch it in, when I used to get pot before it was legal, it was like, I'd like 2 shirts, please, and no seeds in the shirts this time. You had to sort of codify it. No, they're just openly talking in emails about this sort of, sexual perversion, and that they were all doing, and lots of people who you didn't think, or I never imagined were doing it. I see these names come up. So, QAnon, yes, a lot of crazy there, but you know what? You weren't totally wrong about that, guys.
Wow.
Dude.
Have at it, man. I mean, there's so much I could say about that clip, but my goodness, this is just gold. Absolute
I mean, what vindication are you guys waiting for? When we're waiting for the day that is a nationally syndicated show on Sirius XM radio, and that's
well, Stephen Smith is definitely a Q operative, man. I mean, that became pretty obvious like months ago. But
I think they both are. Look, I'm gonna say this again with Bill Maher. I take a whole new look. In fact, as this stuff has been happening, I've been purposely going back to the drops and kind of rereading what was actually said versus what we think, right? So, look, Bill Maher, Kid Love Productions, okay. Red Shoes,
right?
Okay, he's in the drops, okay. To date, I haven't seen him convicted of anything, and I haven't seen him any pictures of or videos of him raping children. Again, doesn't mean he did, doesn't mean he didn't, but it also doesn't mean we can't automatically say he's a bad person. We have to just look, because if we're going to do that, if you're going to say Bill Maher because of Kid Love and Red Shoes is a pedophile, then you can say Donald Trump's a pedophile because he was on the plane, right? It's the same logic. It's circumstantial evidence without proof. And again, I'm not people always kind of like, you're defending Bill Maher. No, I'm not. I'm just saying we don't know yet.
No, I get you.
He may have been on the periphery. Maybe his Kid Love Productions was a tongue-in-cheek nod to all the pedo friends he had. I don't know.
Maybe that was his cover. Who knows?
Right.
He was always an operative.
Or maybe he really was a pedo. I don't know. We have to wait and find out. I'm sure we will. But my point being is throw all that out the window, because at the end of the day, he's in the drops, and it's very clear this guy's been flipped. To what
Doesn't
level?
Look like the same dude to me, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard that. He is.
Doesn't really matter though, honestly.
No, it doesn't. And honestly, I have to be honest, Patriot, I haven't made the comparison, so I couldn't even speak to that. I would believe you if that's the case.
Sometimes it's tough to tell. It's tough to tell,
yeah.
But it's not really. It's not worth getting into the weeds on. It's really it's like the net effect of all this stuff is what matters, right?
Yeah. So, like, again, let me be very clear. He could have been a bad guy that was taken out. He could have been a bad guy that's under submission. He could have been a malignant guy that is being used. But it's been pretty obvious. I mean, I actually make it a point. By the way, that video clip was courtesy of the Vigilant Fox, great X and Telegram account. He does a great job.
Oh yeah, I love the account. Yeah.
And in fact, I always look at his account on Friday nights. Because Maher's been on my radar for a couple of years now, and he's almost like a slightly more left version of Joe Rogan. Like, he hasn't completely given up his TDS, but he's the guy every Friday night when he does his monologue. He's basically like, I don't really like Trump, but the rest of you Democrats, you've all lost your mind. That's every monologue every Friday, right? He goes hard in the paint on ICE. He goes hard in the paint on the woke agenda, on guys like Mamdani. Like, in other words, he's become kind of the voice of reason for the liberals. He's lecturing the liberals every Friday night and telling them, like, listen, you want to not like Trump, that's okay, which keeps them engaged. But then he's giving them a tongue
disarms them a little bit, right?
It disarms him because
yeah,
he hasn't completely flipped. Although he did go and have that dinner with Trump, and he came back and he did a monologue about basically what a great guy Trump was. So anyway, there's all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And his panels, he's MTG has been a regular guest on that show. bringing in in fact, I have another clip I didn't even get to play last week. Just last Friday night, he had Marjorie Taylor Greene and Joe Scarborough on. And now, whether they're acting or not, I got no idea. But Joe Scarborough's like, I don't understand this issue with the vaccines. And Marjorie Taylor Greene's like, he's like, my kid's got all the vaccines. And she goes, your kid got 72 shots? He goes, what do you mean 72 shots? He's like, the schedule, it's 72 shots now. Mar's like, yeah, they did change it a years back. It's 72 shots. Isn't that crazy, right? So they're getting, and this is what's been going on over and over and over again. Yeah. So when absolutely, there's some degree, whether it's him or his producer, I don't know what it is, his writers, somebody's leaning into that show to get these messages out, tone down the rhetoric on the far left. And so when I see him with Stephen A. Smith, who's another guy that's, that's kind of gone from TDS land back to center normalcy, and the two of them together, I mean,
funny how that works.
Who the hell thinks to bring up QAnon was right? Come on now.
Yeah, right. Absolutely. And I happen to know a lot of these like far left loonies who listen to Bill Maher and worship the guy. I mean, he's like, he really is a thought leader for the far left. And just, I mean, it's the same general, it's the same blueprint that we've seen and we've talked about over and over and over, most famously, of course, with Elon, right? The way that Mike King talks about, like taking a black chess piece and painting it white, and having them over a long period of time gradually move their audience more and more in the right direction. Joe Rogan, another huge example of that. But we're starting to see that same thing play out over and over and over again. And, it's interesting to me because it really does. One of the points that you made about just automatically assuming that certain people are bad, even though we were cautioned that by the end of all this, there's going to be a lot of people who are very surprised in terms of individuals who they thought were good guys and vice versa, individuals they thought that were bad guys. And who knows, like you said, I mean, we don't really know. Ultimately, we may never get the answers in terms of how this was all mapped out and what arrangements were made, who was flipped, and so on and so forth. We may be left to speculate about that forever. I mean, I'd love to think that eventually they're going to lay their cards on the table and we're going to know the truth about how all this went down. But it really speaks to the years of conditioning. When we first read the Q drops, and rightly so, we saw that stuff about Bill Maher, and we saw the red shoes, we saw Kid Love Productions, and back in that era, I mean, he was just viciously attacking Trump constantly. So it would lead one to the conclusion like, oh yeah, this is a bad guy, right? I mean, very clearly putting him into that category. But as time goes on, and you and I were actually talking a little bit about this backstage, we're starting to question more and more, at least become a lot more open-minded to the possibility that some of these individuals, even somebody like Epstein, right? Do we really know whether or not Epstein was co-opted or flipped at a certain point? Do we really? And you made an excellent point about the hard evidence as it pertains to Bill Maher, like, the Kid Love Productions, that certainly doesn't look good. The red shoes, that certainly doesn't look good. But that in and of itself is not incriminating and could have been done as part of his cover. Now, who knows? He could have been flipped. There's lots of different ways that this could have played out. But even with a guy like Epstein, one has to wonder, especially if he's still alive, and a lot of the information that came out of the most recent release, I think lends itself to at least considering that possibility. I've long believed that Epstein, forget about him not killing himself. I've long believed that he's not dead and that he is in WITSEC. But the idea, I guess, of being open-minded and allowing these scenarios to play out and not get married to a certain narrative is becoming increasingly important. And I know you had some thoughts on that as well. So if you could maybe speak to that a little bit as it pertains to Epstein, or really just in the broader scheme of things, that a lot of what we may have been initially led to believe was done strategically and tactically, but may actually not be a reflection of the full truth.
Yeah, well, that's the point, because I actually see some people getting a little salty with us in the chat that it's stupid to say Bill Maher is a good guy. Didn't say he was a good guy.
No,
Just
we're not
saying we
saying
don't
that. We're
approve.
just,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
that's,
That's why I brought it up, Patriot. Thank you, because you teed it up perfectly. Let's think about this for a minute. If Q had come in 2017 and led you to believe that 5 people in Hollywood were pedophiles, would we be having this great awakening right now?
no.
No. 10 people? Nope. 30 people? Nope. Q led us, and in fact, they let our minds wander a little bit. Remember the list? Everyone saw the list and the Q drops. How many people know that that list made no mention of Epstein whatsoever? It was literally just a list of names.
Yeah.
Right? In fact, I should bring that drop up. I'd have to dig it up. But that's what I'm talking about. And I'm one of the people, when I first started looking at Q, like I was like, oh yeah, that's the Epstein list. No, it's not. It's literally just a list of names in Hollywood. It's a list of famous names. Q never said this is the Epstein logs. It's the Epstein list. It's difficult. It's in the 3,000s somewhere. It's 33. It doesn't matter. The point I'm trying to make is throughout, and I think they understood, because the Q operation has proven, Patriot, over and over again, that they know how we're going to think and react before we ever think and reacted. They knew. They knew if they put that list out.
Not just the target audience, but anons too. That's an important.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So they knew if we put some things out about pedophilia, and we put the symbolism with Anderson Cooper and the pool, and we put the thing with the kid, and we put the white rabbit and the adrenaline, we'll put that all in there. And then we're going to put a list of names. And from there, we'll just let their imaginations run with it. And then people are going to sensationalize it. And you got Isaac Cappy making these videos. And all of a sudden, you have millions of people that has been led to believe that everybody is a pedophile. I know a lot of people might not admit it. I will. I think most of us probably went through some phase of this operation where there was a night where you went to sleep. You're like, holy shit, everyone's a pedophile.
Well, you still see that. You still see that on social media. It's all over X. Like every single one of them. Every single one of them. Yeah. That's still being.
Oh, they sold more than 10 million records. They're a pedophile. Wait, where's the logic in that? That doesn't even make sense, right? Wait, they have every CEO, every politician, every judge, every sheriff, every Hollywood, every musician, that was by design. They had to flare this thing up and get you to feel like you were surrounded by evil. And then what happens is you start to come back down to earth and realize, hey, I'm not downplaying this. This is a major problem. It is in our government. It is in sports. It is in corporate America. It is in Hollywood. But it doesn't mean just because someone's pictured with a pair of red shoes. Like I used to own red shoes. I threw them out because of this movement, because people probably start labeling me as a pedophile. But, and that's the point I'm trying to make is, I see it all the time. Every time I bring up this conversation, invariably there's somebody in a comment or chat that you're a moron. I'm like, where's the video of XYZ person? Like, all we have is internet rumors, circumstantial evidence, and cryptic messages. We're not going to know until this thing plays out.
That's a great point.
And in the meantime, I'm absolutely very open to something like, God forbid, like Epstein was an infiltrator. Q straight up told you Epstein wasn't the target. What if Epstein's not the target? What if, and then it goes in to tell you, basically that drop tells you, don't look at Epstein. Look at Maxwell. Look at her father. Look at the people behind them. Like Q came right out and said, don't worry about Epstein. Epstein's nothing. But again, Epstein was the public facing guy. If they started with
he's a shiny object.
You need a shiny object to get people's attention. Yeah. So that's why, I'm perfectly comfortable having these conversations and saying, like, I could picture a situation where, let me just give you one more thing. This will take 30 more seconds. Just picture this for a minute. Humor me, folks. Understand that to this date, we don't actually have video, and I hope we never see this, of Epstein raping a child. Again, we have some sketchy looking pictures, which God knows where this could come from. Could you possibly picture a situation where Jeffrey Epstein was captured? In other words, he started dating Maxwell, or however it is they got together, and she put the screws to him and was like, hey, you're going to come work for me or you're going to die. Right? This could have happened in 2004. This could have happened 20 years ago, 30 years ago. And now he's working for her. And yes, he is out there recruiting people, but from there on out, they handle it. They're videotaping it. They're coercing him at the island. They're doing all, he's just a useful idiot. And then picture somebody from the U.S. military comes along in 2008, 2009, 2010, who knows, and says, we can get you out of this. It's not going to be pretty, but we can get you out of this. Now, again, does that make him a squeaky clean good guy? No. But maybe he's not the predator he's portrayed to be. And again, I'm not defending him. I have no idea. I give it a 50-50 shot. But I just try to stay away from the absolutism of saying this guy's bad. Look, there's somebody bad that was controlling Epstein Island. There is somebody bad that was controlling our
nobody's
government.
Denying the nobody's denying the evil.
Doesn't change a thing. Horrible things took place. People got raped. People got blackmailed. People got videotaped. I just don't know who that's. I don't know where to put my venom yet, because I know what the drops told me. They said, don't even worry about him. Look at the people above him.
Yeah, and they said there's a reason that we highlighted Epstein. But you're also correct that there were indications, very, very clear indications that Epstein was not the main target. So it raises a lot of questions about that. And and also, I do believe that until we actually get the hard evidence, all we really can do is speculate about who's good and who's bad based upon the information that we're being given. But until we actually get that hard evidence and the public sees for themselves these people actually engaged in these horrific crimes, we're not going to really know. Right.
Yeah. So, I saw somebody in the chat. I'm not picking anybody. I understand it. They said, well, it's just a big mind fuck. Right. But that's what we're trying to say, right? Like it shouldn't be a big mind F, because the facts of the story, like the important things, don't change. Just like Mike King's book, which you featured as well, right? Mike King came up and upended the whole narrative on Jekyll Island. Well, great. Okay. Yeah, there you go. But all that does is change your view on our emotional view on a JP Morgan or a Nelson Aldrich, right? It doesn't change the fact that we got a Fed, we got a IRS, it's fiat currency, it's taxation, right? It doesn't change that. So I hear you. Like, in other words, it's possible. Like the end of the day, whether Epstein was the worst monster ever, or he was a monster that was flipped, or he was a gray hat, it doesn't change it doesn't change what we're watching play out right now. So in other words, that's why I guess just the best advice I can give is marry yourself to the narrative. Don't marry yourself to the players, because it's the narrative that's going to wake everybody up.
Well said. Yeah, but well said. And by the way, somebody in the chat did give me the drop number on that. It was 4577. So I'll just pull that up really quick just to prove the point here. It's a list of names.
Yeah, just scroll to the bottom. Let me make sure I didn't get that wrong. Yeah, no, that's it. Yeah. So folks, this is what everyone has been circulating for 6 years now on Telegram and X. And look at let's say Stephen Colbert. He's on the Epstein list. Maybe Steven Tyler. Like, here are all those names, and almost every one of these people, if you drop it in a chat somewhere, somebody's going to come back and say he's a pedophile. He's on the list. No, this is the list that Q gave. And again, that just goes back to how we started the segment, Patriot. I think they knew exactly what they were doing when they put this in there.
Yeah, right. I agree. I can't argue with that. And again, I think that's part of the, part of what drives a lot of, earlier you had said, what are people keep saying that they're waiting, what exactly are you waiting for? It's a really good question. And I don't know. I mean, for different people, they might articulate the answer to that in a different way. But for me, I guess if you were to ask me, like, well, what are you waiting for? That's what I really want to know, is like, I want to know who actually did what, like just to see the evidence so that we can get beyond the speculation and actually just know what crimes were committed by whom. I mean, we certainly know the nature of it, and I'm not suggesting that knowing the actual perpetrators, again, kind of like what you said. I mean, the evil exists, it's out there, nobody's questioning that. And at the end of the day, does it really matter like who on that list committed what crime? As long as they've been brought to justice for it, we're all going to be happy with that. But I think that's in a lot of ways what I'm hoping for and waiting for, is to be able to get beyond the necessity, even at least in my mind, of having to speculate about who did what. But you raise a really good point, which is it really is. It's a scenario where anything is possible and anything is on the table. And we have to remember the nature of the war that we're fighting. It's fifth generation war. It's information war. It's asymmetrical. It's based upon information and disinformation. So much of what we've been fed, we've kind of assumed that as anons, as people who are dialed into Q and who have read the drops and done the research, that we necessarily know who's who and what's what. But we also have to, I think, recognize, as you were alluding to, that yes, there's a very specific reason that the white hats are disseminating information in a certain way to the normies, to the target audience. But there's also there's a whole separate conversation to be had about how they were pulling the strings, if you will, of the anons to get us to be focused on certain things at certain times, to put narratives out in accordance with the way that they were rolling all of this out. In other words, I don't think that just because we've read all the drops that we necessarily have even close to a full picture in terms of who is playing what role and on what side.
No, and I think it's important to acknowledge, I forget who actually said it. A few people have said it. I would venture to guess 75% of the stuff you're seeing in the quote unquote Epstein files being circulated right now is BS. That's just my honest opinion. Now, there is some real stuff in there. In fact, I got a video, if you want to play it in a minute, it's up to you, of Kier Starmer talking about, there's one video of a hit guy in his underwear. But there's a lot of stuff in there. It's important to remind everybody. I think everyone probably knows this by now, but maybe not. One of the big ones, actually, Joe Rogan was talking about this on his podcast today. I have those clips. He was talking to, I forget who his guest was. They were talking about Pizzagate being real. 20 million people.
Yeah, you mentioned that, yeah.
But one of the things that got circulated is, George Bush was eating babies. And again, I got to give my hat tip to MJ Truth, who really dug into this stuff and identified that what was happening is people were taking, in those 3 million pages, are FBI tips. Like, I could call right now and I could pick any person out of the chat and say, this person was eating babies at Epstein Island, and that will be in the files, right? So just because it's and there was a lot of sensationalized stuff. And like I said on the roundtable today, Patriot, I think some of that is maybe some actual tips that were caught in. I think a lot of it is put in there by Forpog for conversation.
Oh yeah.
Like Joe Rambo found the page, which is a real page, and it's an entire page talking about how Joe Biden was executed in 2019 and he's not really the president, and it's being passed off as an FBI tip. Now, to Joe's credit, he didn't say it was real. He just posted and said that's in the files, and it is. But that seems to me like a Forpog narrative advancing type of thing. So, and to that point, I saw somebody say before, they tainted the jury pool by releasing these files. No. It's important to go back and read the Epstein Files Transparency Act. And it basically instructs them to release everything except anything that's still under a sealed indictment. They didn't taint any jury pool, because that's what I'm getting at. This is a little exercise for everybody right now to dissect all this stuff, cause the mass awakening, not really for us to get people like Joe Rogan and Bill Maher and stuff to talk about it. And anything that's real juicy is still sealed, because as of my last check, there's 520 out of 610,000 sealed indictments that are still sealed. So meaning anything that is in those that's part of that RICO case is still sealed. So they didn't taint anything. And like I said, we are just getting started, because imagine how much stuff is in those files.
Oh, totally. totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we can never forget that Q told us that they're the gatekeepers of all information. And so are we supposed to think that now this is some sort of an exception? No,
Right.
absolutely
Right.
not. I would agree with you. I mean, in looking through the files, to the extent that I could, I mean, I don't have all day to be able to sift through all this stuff, but certainly a lot of that information that was in there is unsubstantiated, uncorroborated. It could be, like you said, I mean, just some forepaw guy posing, or whatever, posing as a Democrat, or just to infuse the files with all of this information or disinformation. And it also, in a lot of ways, it explains why Trump has referred to it as a Democrat hoax. But I think that the real takeaway from all of this is that, yes, the part about George Bush, and I think it was who was it? Bush and Clinton. I'm pretty sure it was Bush and Bill Clinton talking about, raping an infant, or like dismembering the body, and I mean, just a bunch of really horrific details. Okay, maybe it's not substantiated now. Maybe there's no actual proof of that now, but what does it do? It introduces
Right.
that idea to the consciousness of the masses, and I would probably guess that the White Hats infused all of this information in there, specifically information that was from confidential human sources that couldn't be actually proven, in order to preheat the oven, in a sense, to get people to the point where they're ready when the actual unsealed indictments become public, and when that hardcore stuff really comes out. Like, same basic pattern, right? In order
Yep.
to get people mentally, emotionally, psychologically prepared to absorb this information. So
Yeah. If you want to do it, there's the Rogan clip that's down there.
yeah, it was
from
Mike
today.
Pence. That's right.
Yeah,
let's
Rogan and Mike Pence. It's a perfect example of why they put that sensational stuff in there, true or not. Look at the conversations. This is 20 million people listening to this.
People thought about that with Pizzagate. And there's some stuff that I saw online that was like George W. Bush was like involved in ritual sacrifice, or things along those lines, like killing babies and eating people and wild shit.
Yeah.
What do you think that stuff is?
I don't know. I don't.
Do you think it really occurs?
What I'll say is, this is a bad week to be a total Pizzagate denialist. You would feel a lot more comfortable about it a week ago than you would this week. I don't particularly focus, or I don't want to say care. I don't. My knowledge set on it is a lot more limited on it, because I don't think it's a central crux of political influence. I don't know if it's kind of almost a inside joke in a certain way. Jeffrey Epstein himself in these emails is unbelievably trolly. He'll say things that are the kind of shit posts you say to a buddy or your brother or something that you don't mean.
Right.
It's
You're
tongue
fucking around.
Cheek.
Yeah.
But if you were a cynical, out to get you person who somehow obtained that text message, you'd say, "Oh, look, he said it." And so there's a lot of that going on. But the fact is I've seen a lot of images shared around the time period of when Pizzagate was popping off in 2016 that all I'll say is it doesn't look good or easily explainable. At the same time, a lot of those screenshots I have not, for most of these, for the things I've posted about or that I'm talking about here, I've gone to the Justice Department file. I've looked up the file number. I've confirmed whether or not the screenshot is actually what it is. For those, I have not yet, but I wouldn't feel totally confident saying there's no there. But that's about as far as I can go on that.
It's a bad week to be a Pizzagate denier.
Isn't it though? Yeah, and it's a great.
Just to clarify for everybody, that actual, I don't believe that Mike Benz didn't look that up for a minute, because this is one of the most debated things. To your point, that was a tip that was put in by Michael Moore, the film director. And so, is that the smoking gun on George Bush eating babies? No, I think Michael Moore is probably paid to put that in there, but I think Mike Benz executed that perfectly. He could have said, I don't know about that. We'll have to wait and see. But he knows, and he did it perfectly to get people to he didn't deny it. And to me, that's going to get people thinking.
Yeah, that's really the whole point, right? It's just to open up people's minds to start asking themselves, and really perhaps amongst each other, their normie friends, like, do you really, like, exactly what Joe Rogan said? Do you think this stuff is real? Like, do you think this is actually going on? Is there some there? Or like Bill Maher said, there's a little bit more than smoke. And I think that's exactly what they're trying to do, is they're trying to get people to that point to get them ready. Because we all know that we haven't seen anything yet. We haven't seen anything. So, all right. Did you want me to show, before we pivot, do you want me to show the Kier Starmer clip that's been up there for
up to you, dude? It's your call.
Yeah, let's go ahead. Let's watch.
All right.
Clear. No one is above accountability. And no one, however well connected, however experienced, however senior, should hold public office if they cannot meet the basic test of honesty. I also want to address the publication of the information Mandelson provided during the appointment process. I understand the strength of public feeling. I share the anger that people feel when powerful individuals appear to escape scrutiny. And I want to be able to release those documents as quickly as possible. I wanted to release them yesterday, in fact, and to talk about them at Prime Minister's questions. But the police have advised that releasing certain information now could risk prejudicing a future investigation or legal process. And however frustrating from my personal point of view that is, and it is, I will not take any step, however politically tempting, however popular, that risks justice for victims. Because this is not, and must never become, a political game. The victims of Epstein have lived with trauma that most of us can barely comprehend. And they've had to relive it again and again. They have seen accountability delayed and too often denied. To them, I want to say this. I am sorry. Sorry for what was done to you. Sorry that so many people with power failed you. Sorry for having believed Mandelson's lies and appointed him. And sorry that even now, you're forced to watch this story unfold in public once again. But I also want to say this. In this country, we will not look away. We will not shrug our shoulders. And we will not allow the powerful to treat justice as optional. We will pursue the truth. We will uphold the integrity of public life. And we will do everything within our power and in the interests of justice to ensure accountability is delivered. That is what the public expects. That is what the victims deserve. And it is what I will do.
I'm sorry. I was just reading some of the comments as Kier Starmer was talking, and I couldn't help but laugh.
I was actually I wanted to highlight too that this is all happening in real time. Tim Stewart 500 says, my kids are telling me that this is all over TikTok and Instagram.
Oh yeah.
And Frog Dog 13 says, everyone is calling me asking me what's going on. I love it. Almost time to post the "I told you so" memes.
Oh man, I'm jealous. Like I said, I want people to start coming to me and asking questions, but I don't know.
Soon enough, friends. Soon enough.
Yeah, I've often said that, you know, if I had made any inroads whatsoever in my personal life, you and I probably wouldn't be having this discussion right now.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Same here.
But yeah, so you had highlighted that clip. I mean, you know, honestly, I've almost gotten the feeling that internationally that this story is getting a lot more mainstream coverage than it is here in the US. I don't know if that's accurate or not, but some of the things that I've seen seem to be um, kind of pointing in that direction. Like this is getting a lot more traction in the mainstream media than it is here. I mean, we obviously know it's the Q mainstream media. We get all that, but you know, what's your thought on that? And yeah,
from what I've seen in the past 48 hours, especially because we're getting buried with the Savannah Guthrie psyop.
Oh
which is
boy,
a psyop. Sorry. Yeah, I've seen more stuff coming out of Europe and the UK, Australia. I played a clip of that last night.
Yeah.
I would say, well, again, if you're talking strictly legacy media, yeah, because everything's here is hijacked, which I think is the purpose of it, right? They're trying to show people how they hijack narratives.
Yep.
And I see millions of people. We talked about in the roundtable today. I see a lot of people going, look at what they're doing. Look at this circus with Savannah Guthrie. They're doing it so we don't talk about the Epstein files. But then if you go and you look at like the UK news, and like I said, I pulled some clips from Australia last night. You know, it seems like right now it's getting more attention, and it's not surprising, right? Q told you that essentially, you know, how many times did it highlight WW worldwide? It told you what was going to happen here was going to spread worldwide, and this is there's two really easy things that you can see how quickly they'd spread worldwide. One of them is Epstein, because obviously that network crossed over the Five Eyes and all, you know, dozens and dozens of nations in terms of the blackmail operation and trafficking. And also keep in mind 2020, which is the other thing Trump is seeding the hell of right now. We know through the released information from Venezuela that the Smartmatic Dominion network had flipped elections in 72 countries. So those are two narratives that we focus on right here because we're waiting. But as those start to break, that to me is when you're going to see it spread worldwide. And that's why it's so dicey, right? I mean, think about, and Q talked about this. Q talked about the impact and how, again, I'm paraphrasing, but how it was going to be important as to how they did this because it affected such a large swath of leaders worldwide. And then also, again, think about 2020. You know, we get very impatient with wanting 2020, but the second you drop that bomb about 2020, it's not just the United States. You've now all but proven that the elections of 71 other countries have been affected. You see how quickly that could destabilize the entire world if you didn't have a good backstop in place and a way to roll that out.
That's a great point. Yeah.
You could say you could literally send the entire world into chaos if even 10 of those 71 countries, if the people started rising up going, what the F, our elections are rigged, like it could get dangerous very quickly. And I now do understand when I see the scope of this thing, why it's so dicey on how they roll it out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in 2020, it's seeming like I actually just saw a clip from John Solomon pertaining to some of the new information that might be coming out. Actually, might be a good time to show that since we just brought it up.
Sure.
And maybe have you comment on that a little bit. I'm sure you're up to speed on everything, so I know you've seen this clip. But let me see if here it is. Okay. All right. Well, here he is, King Solomon. Let's put him up here. The right window? Yeah, here we go. Okay.
I believe that the President of the United States is soon going to be briefed by Tulsi Gabbard and other intelligence officials based on my reporting about additional intrusions, significant large-scale intrusions into various forms of our election system. Now, I'm not talking about getting a machine and flipping the vote, but maybe getting enough of state voter databases that a foreign power could work with people on the ground in the United States to fill out fake registrations for people who are on dirty voter rolls. Those licenses that were sent into Chicago were going to be used to make absentee ballot applications, according to the FBI predicate. By the way, Chris Wray's FBI didn't look at that; they shut it down. If a foreign power was that far into the election databases of state systems that they could figure out what driver's licenses to send here, the next question becomes, who were they working with on the ground? Who was going to file those ballot requests? I think that's why Tulsi Gabbard was down in Georgia, why you might see her in Arizona, why the FBI will probably be in Arizona, and why the president's about to get a briefing. And all of this new information could have a profound effect on the Save America Act, which is, all right, some people say it feels like we're doing an awful lot. There's not a real problem. These next revelations, if the president were to declassify them after he gets debriefed on them in the next few days, they could educate senators and House members and give them a greater inspiration to maybe go ahead and do the voter ID and the citizenship check. That is a big moment. Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel and Pam Bondi are driving this. It's been below the radar, but they're doing some really big stuff. Now the president's going to find out what it is. And then at that point, the opportunity can declassify it. Let's see what it is. There's one other element to this. If government officials lied to us after the 2020 election, there's still an opportunity in some of those cases to pursue criminal cases against them. We'll see where it all comes out, but that's what's going on in the background of the Save America Act debate right now.
Very, very interesting.
I did not see that clip, but ain't that interesting, Patriot? Ain't that interesting that the Save America Act is in the forefront this week, and that's going around. Wait, I just forgot. Who was that other person that tweeted about that on voter ID? Oh yeah, Nicki Minaj. In the middle of all her tweets on Monday was this tweet about how absurd, like
voter IDs,
she I'm paraphrasing. She essentially was acting like she kind of just found out that all these people don't want voter ID and how insane it is. And when I looked at it 2 days ago, it had 30 million views. So there's another connection right there for the people that think Mike King is crazy for calling her out as a Q operative, right? She deployed that on Monday, like, oh my God, we should have voter ID. And now bang, this week, here comes all that stuff. And if you want to add to that as well, sorry, I don't mean to step on you there.
No, go ahead.
I'll just throw this other clip into the tray. It's only 30 seconds. Trump, this kind of bookends that. This is, I think, a preview of his Super Bowl interview on Sunday with NBC, and he's telling you that we're about to find out the true winner of Georgia.
Let me ask you this. If China or any of these countries are involved in our elections, that would bring her into it. And everybody knows that Russia, they talked about Russia, it turned out to be a hoax. It was Hunter Biden, it wasn't Russia. Look, we have to have honest elections. Yeah. There should be nothing wrong with the fact that they went in, got ballots from a while ago, and they're going to look at them. And now they're going to find out the true winner of that state.
Timing is everything, isn't that something?
Crazy how that works, right?
Yeah. And then was it John Thune who came out and said that I don't really think the voter ID thing is worth the effort or something along those lines. I'm pretty sure. Just another way to trigger people. But
and they've you're arriving at this point now. There's a couple of notable things there besides the obvious, which is things we're getting excited about. I was pointing out today on the roundtable, we showed a different clip from that interview. That is NBC. Very interesting that NBC is, at the center of this whole Savannah Guthrie thing. We were making the connections to Savannah Guthrie as NBC. She's mentioned in the drops.
She is, yeah.
As one of the people that colluded with Hillary in 2016. So that's where we're getting the argument from that she's been leveraged, flipped. All those guys have been. But there's your NBC connection. And you have NBC. All the clips I've seen so far of Trump in that interview are very positive. Now, I always tell people, make that make sense to me, because we've been presented for, especially the last 2 years, 24 and 25, that this is the final battle. They're desperate. Their backs against the wall. They have to get all the stops out. So therefore, they're going to try to assassinate Trump twice. They're going to, they're going to try to jail him. They're going to do this. They're going to do that. They're going to do everything. And then when they have a chance to dunk on him on a nationally televised interview, they let him run a campaign speech. All the clips I've seen, he's in the Oval Office comparing himself to Lincoln in Washington, showing the Declaration of Independence, giving truth about 2020. And like I said today, go back to a few months ago. You remember that interview with him and Kristen Welker on Meet the Press or whatever the other NBC? They're sitting there fighting the whole time.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to note how amicable that has been so far, which doesn't make sense. They didn't selectively edit it. Doesn't make sense. And then also the fact that, I think we're at a point now where the country's ready for it. Again, I know polls are rigged and manipulated, but every poll I've seen clear across the board is that we're at an 85% on voter ID. So 85, it's straight across the board. Everybody wants voter ID. And my guess is now you're going to see a little bit of kayfabe over the next week or two of some of the crazy Democrats trying to come out and fight against voter ID, because finally it took 5 years. I understand. But you go back to 2020, that was actually for some people a legitimate vote, a legitimate debate. There was actually some people that thought it was racist and this and that. Now it's at the 85%. So now we've prepped the masses, and you can let them see the AOCs of the world and let the Jessica Tarloffs and then make stupid arguments about why you can't have voter ID. And again, there's another success. Yeah, SBS Music Production says that means it's 97%. Probably right. Probably right.
No doubt.
Right.
No doubt. Yeah, it's only the 4 to 6%. The 4 to 6 percenters, as I call them, that are still trying to cling to this ridiculous notion. And I saw Nicki Minaj. I thought I had it up on my X, but apparently I didn't share it. But she basically said during an interview that it's just straight common sense, and everybody knows this. You have to show ID for literally everything. And the notion that people shouldn't have to show a document, an ID, to prove that they're an American citizen to vote. I mean, it's one of those issues that you're right. I mean, back in 2020, there was still a significant amount of the population that was deeply brainwashed into believing what they heard on MSNBC, like that it's actually racist to ask people to provide identification when they come to vote. When in reality, I mean, that's actually making that statement is inherently racist. Like, what, black people don't have enough sense to be able to go and obtain an identification card that they can then present at the voting booths, like making this whole argument about access and I mean all of these crazy things. Yeah, they still had a lot of people under that mind control, but now that's starting, the matrix is starting to break. People are just being increasingly able to just identify common sense. Like common sense is actually becoming a little bit more common now. And you're right. That's probably the way they're going to play it out. They're just going to allow these Q operatives to continue to pound that drum and to further alienate themselves from the masses, from the 97% of people out there who want this and recognize that it's just it's common sense, a good idea.
Yeah. The last stupid argument that I heard today. And again, they even thought of this, is they were saying, well, they're saying that you're going to need a birth certificate or a passport to register to vote, not just a driver's license. Now, in the past, that might have given somebody a chance to say, well, yeah, that's a little stringent. What if you don't know where your passport is or your birth certificate? But what did they give us over the last year? Oh, yeah, there's millions of people that are illegal that were given driver's licenses, right? Yeah. So they even thought of that. They pounded that psyop to death. So now if somebody tries coming at you, say, well, I mean, what if I don't know where my birth certificate is? Can't I just use a driver's license? Well, you could, but that would defeat the purpose of voter ID, because we understand that millions of people who are not citizens have driver's license. They even thought of that.
True. So true. Yeah. Love it. Okay, well, let's pivot here a little bit. And I mean, there's lots of different things, lots of different areas that we could go. One thing I wanted to ask you about is I mean, I don't want to get into a discussion about all the things that have played out in Minneapolis and with ICE, because as you've said, I mean, this has really kind of been beaten to death. But there was the drawback, the announcement of the drawback of, I think it was 700 ICE officers in Minneapolis upon Tom Homan stepping onto the scene. And just like that, all of a sudden, Tim Waltz and Jacob Frey and Keith Ellison are all on board with getting local law enforcement to actually assist ICE. But it's interesting the way that this is playing out. It's garnering a lot of different reactions. Some people view it as Trump has come out and essentially said that we're going to take a softer approach. I think that those were his words. It's caused a bit of anger, I would say, a bit of an uproar among certain elements of his base. The idea that he, seems to be capitulating to this, to the tactics of the left. That's essentially the way the argument goes. And I happen to think that there is a very plausible tactical reason why they've gone in this direction. And they have that, it's not like they're just doubling down, tripling down, quadrupling down after the Renee Good incident and then the Alex Pretty incident. It's like Trump seems to be saying, all right, well, let's scale this thing back a little bit here. I was curious to get your thoughts on that. What do you think's going on with that?
I thought you teed that up perfectly. I think maybe before I give my commentary, why don't you run that Tom Homan clip from early this morning? And I think that'll tee us up perfectly to kind of make the point where I think we're both getting at here.
Okay.
General Mayor Fry and law enforcement officials about increasing coordination in a lawful way between the county jails and ICE to avoid public safety threats being released back in the community. While we had our differences, one thing was clear: we all committed to public safety for all who live in the Twin Cities. We have made significant progress under the direction of President Trump, working with state and local officials here in Minnesota, and I expect that to increase in the coming weeks. We continue to have discussions. I'll have discussions this afternoon. We currently have an unprecedented number of counties communicating with us now and allowing ICE to take custody of illegal aliens before they hit the streets. Unprecedented cooperation. And I'll say it again. This is efficient, requires only 1 or 2 officers to assume custody of a criminal alien target rather than 8 or 10 officers going into the community and arresting that public safety threat. This frees up more officers to arrest or remove criminal aliens. More officers taking custody of criminal aliens directly from the jails means less officers on the street doing criminal operations. This is smart law enforcement, not less law enforcement. It's safer for the community, safer for the officers, and safer for the alien. This coordination also makes it far more safe for the Twin Cities.
Well, it's interesting. Before I get you to comment on that, when all of this was playing out over the past month, again, there was that kind of feeling of, okay, where are they going to go with this? There was all this talk about the Insurrection Act. People were demanding it. Like, we need the Insurrection Act. This is getting out of control, on and on and on. And my personal feeling on that was, I just don't think it's time yet. I think that they're going to put this on the back burner again. And we've used that metaphor many times, of course. So the chef preparing the meal, it goes on the front burner, and then something else goes on, takes its place, etc. At the very least, I would imagine that they would probably want to wait until, if they're going to have an insurrection, wait until it's a little bit warmer out and it's not like -11. It's just so many places across the country. But, all kidding aside here, I was a bit initially. I was a bit surprised to see these optics of Trump, like kind of, backing off, even though I had anticipated, like I said, that this was not going to be the actual moment when they dropped the hammer. It took me a little bit off guard, but then I started to kind of reverse engineer it a little bit from a tactical standpoint and develop a theory about where I think this is going. So, but I want to hear your take on it. And what do you think is going on? I mean, what changed all of a sudden? I mean, Tom Homan shows up on the scene, and now everybody seems to be kind of falling into line. We know, we can safely say that we know that Jacob Frey and Tim Walz, Keith Ellison, I mean, they're all part of the show. This is all part of the movie. So what do you think this is all about, Dave?
Well, I mean, clearly, and I think if you didn't believe that they were part of the show, or if you didn't believe you were watching a show in Minneapolis, you certainly should now. Now, why do I say that? Now, I don't disagree with you, man. Did I necessarily expect it to go that way? No, but at the same time, that's why if you go back, and I'm sure if you watch any of our shows, we didn't say they're going to call the Insurrection Act. We played a video of Fox News saying they should do it. Like, we're telling you what's being said. We don't know. But in retrospect, am I surprised by this? No, this actually proves it's a psyop. Because you got to go back to what we were told, right? It's important to remember what the talking points that were put out there to the public. It's an insurrection. It is domestic terrorism. It is domestic terrorism being weaponized and encouraged by the government, by the mayor, by the police chief, by the governor, which is in direct violation of federal law. We were also told they're doing it because they want to sow violence so they can maintain power. They want to sow violence because they have to protect their network. We were also told it's their last gasp because they got caught in the fraud. They need to do this to protect themselves from getting indicted. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm in the seat of Governor Walz and I'm staring down federal charges, potential sedition charges, and fraud charges for $100 billion that involves bringing in Somali refugees over a 10-year period and flooding the zone to create the biggest fraud against the United States in history, I'm probably not giving up on it in 5 days.
Yeah, right.
Right? That's where when he put that thing out, we reached an agreement. I'm like, there's your psyop, right?
Yep.
And now look at what he's saying. He's telling you, you're right, dude. Some of the and again, I don't care if a couple of libs out there want to take a victory lap because Trump backed down. Have fun. Go watch Savannah Guthrie coverage or whatever you're going to do tonight. It doesn't bother me because what is dasting there is like you had this big resistance. Oh, remember the other narrative? We're going to have a civil war. Well, if you got rumblings of a civil war, it doesn't just tamp down in 5 days. It doesn't work that way. Right? These are, as we all know from Mike King, like these are color revolutions that are fomented and set up over decades, right? This is their big plan. They've been setting this up since the 40s. Like they're not going to give up on it in 5 days if they have a chance to advance the cause. And he's sitting there saying that, the thing that really jumped out at me with that clip is he's talking about unprecedented cooperation. So we're being told a week ago that nobody's cooperating. They're not all of a sudden like that. And the explanation that was given today, which actually does make sense. You saw these optics, Patriot, of every time. And it wasn't just there, Chicago, LA, all these other places. Everywhere they were going to create this deportation, they'd go for one guy, and you notice they'd send like 50 people.
Yep.
Like, what the hell? They need 50 people there for one guy. And what Homan was basically saying is, if you're handing them off from local law enforcement, you only need 2 guys to go get them. You can send 2 guys in a van with a gun and they can get them. So therefore you can actually execute the same number of actually potentially more deportations with fewer people, because instead of sending 10 people each time, you only have to send 2. So dude, my take on it is it was all done to show people, to get everyone to focus their eyes on one place, right? If you're looking at LA and New York and everywhere, it doesn't work. You have to get the whole country to look at one place. So they learn the players, they learned about NGOs, they learned about funded operations. Trump and Cash already told you, we found where all the money's coming from. So that's going to come back around at some point. It's a repeat of 2020, where Q told you they had mapped Antifa and the Soros funding a long time ago. So they got everyone to look at the resistance while it didn't happen anywhere else. And a lot of people made the connection. Joe Rogan was talking about it. Everyone else said, oh, isn't it convenient that they found all this fraud and a week or two later, the whole city starts burning down. They're trying to cover up their fraud. So I think it was just another one of these psyops to get people to see. And again, I'll get pushback from them. It's like, my husband didn't see it. But none of these operations are designed to get everyone to see it at once. It's designed to get some people each time, and eventually some leads to most or all.
Yeah.
Right. So
that pattern recognition.
So they did what they needed to do. I'm sure at some point things will come back around to Minneapolis because there was so much fraud. And I guess if we want to know where the Q operation is going, we can just follow Nick Shirley now, because the next place he went after Minneapolis was right out to California, and he's out there doing the same thing now. So I guess let's see what happens.
Well, that's the one we're all waiting for, is, wait until they uncover what's going on in California. It's gonna make Minneapolis look like a kids play, really, in comparison. But I've always anticipated that, assuming that we are going to see the public invocation of the Insurrection Act, we don't know anything for certain, right? In the same way, we don't really know if there's going to be some sort of a geopolitical World War III scare event. It's been speculated about quite a bit. But the Insurrection Act, this is something that you and I have talked about before, and I think we're both in pretty solid agreement that at a certain point in time, that card is going to get played, unless there's some sort of a massive disinformation element to that whole part of the Q drops. I tend to doubt it. I think it's coming, but I also believe that it's going to be the result of not just, as you pointed out, this was kind of localized to Minneapolis. There were a few other flare-ups across the country, but it was pretty much just in one area. That when Trump decides to play this card, again, according to the movie, the Trump card, perhaps, that it's going to be something that's really kind of this massive uprising, civil unrest across the country. And I saw this as being kind of a warm up for that, in the same way that, what we saw take place. Was it last summer or the summer before? Gosh, I lose track of time, but in California, when everybody was thinking like, okay, the Marines from Camp Pendleton, we're at the precipice, sort of a thing. Like, they're gradually, they keep reintroducing this civil unrest, Insurrection Act dynamic narrative conversation. But when it gets to that boiling point, I guess this is ultimately what I wanted to convey here, is that when it does finally reach that boiling point, that it's going to be widespread across the country. And it's not just going to simply be in relation to waste, fraud, and abuse, but it's probably going to coincide with revelations about election theft, crimes against humanity, things along those lines. In Drop 34, it's made pretty clear that there's a connection to Podesta and 11-3 and so forth. So that's the way I see it, and that this is really just kind of a warm up again to continue to get folks talking about the Insurrection Act, and ultimately, as it pertains to Minnesota, I don't think there's any doubt that we're going to see another flare up there. And a lot of the criticism that I referenced a little bit earlier, and this is not my criticism, by the way, this is just what I've observed, that this is going to embolden the enemy, and that it's rewarding the act of impeding federal law enforcement. And maybe that's, in a weird way, maybe that could be part of the point here, to demonstrate that these insurrectionists are going to continue to engage in, that they're going to interpret this as weakness and continue to stoke more and more civil unrest. Maybe the idea is for Trump to come across, and we referenced that early Q drop earlier in the show, about him having to appear neutral. Like, maybe the idea is for Trump to come across as being the reasonable one, even though he's sort of, scaled back a little bit, that the public needs to see that these individuals are going to continue to engage in lawless behavior. So, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if we see, I mean, who knows what the trigger is going to be, what the timeline is going to look like, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see increased violence against ICE to sort of set the stage for another ramp up or some sort of other staged event to change that current dynamic. But I mean, I honestly believe that the outcome that so many people were afraid of communicating or conveying weakness is exactly the objective. I mean, what does the art of war tell us? It's, appear weak when you're actually strong.
Yep.
So the white hats perhaps want to show the public that these people, you can't negotiate with them. It's like Javier Milei said, you can't give these leftists a single inch because they're just going to interpret that as weakness and continue to push forward. So, that might be a part of what's going on too. I'm not sure, but.
Well, look at it this way, right? And this is kind of what I'm explaining. This is what Q means when they say repeats are necessary. We could argue about the actual number. I'll give an optimistic number. Doesn't matter. One thing that I do believe they accomplished with a good number of people in this last one was drilling home that these were not organic protesters, right?
Sure.
When I see Joe Rogan and others like that talking about it, even on CNN, even though the leftists on CNN weren't saying it, they always have a righty on the panel that's injecting that. So no matter where you went, from Joe Rogan to Fox to alternative media to even CNN, they were injecting the fact that these were not organic protests. Donald Trump was highlighting the signs, right? They were talking about the coordinated T-shirts. They were talking about how quickly they popped up. You have all the videos of people saying, "Hey, what are you here to protest?" "I don't know. I'm getting paid." We've beaten that to death. That was set up earlier this year by the Doge revelations about U.S. aid, right? So you started with that. Now they're showing them what you went into No Kings, and now you moved into this, which is a little bit more violent. The point I'm trying to make is, let's say you take 100 people. Let's say let's be optimistic. Let's say 2/3, like roughly 70% of normies, had some exposure to that this last time around with Minneapolis. Well, that means out of 100 people, that 70 of them have now gotten the memo, right? So throw them away. So that leaves 30. Well, now the next time, let's say you get to 70%, right? What's 70% of 30? 21, right? Now that only leaves 9. In other words, each time you do it, you're chipping away at a number of people. So meaning the next time you run it, there's more people that have learned the message that are be sitting there going, look, they're doing it again. They're doing it again. Here they go. And they're educating everyone else. Like, look, this is how it works. That's the snowball effect of these repeats. So, yeah, I mean, I don't want to make predictions, but would I be surprised if they do this a few more times? Because at a certain point, you're going to get to kind of where we are with Epstein and Pizzagate, where everyone's like, oh, here these effers go again. Now they're in Boston. Okay, look, what? And I think we're getting very close to that point. Once again, that's why it was important that it was only done in Minneapolis, because a lot of common sense people are going like, why is it only here? Why is it only in the place where the fraud is? It's not here. It's not here. It's not here. It's not here. Yeah, dude, I think you're right. And I, at this point, I don't know what it could be. It could be a couple of more of these break out. And then it gets to a point where it's so obvious that it's so staged, and maybe, rather than having the Renee Good and Alex Pretty psyops, which are kind of like 50-50, giving people a chance to debate, maybe the next one will be like super, obvious, where, I don't know, a group of them murder an ICE agent on live TV or something crazy like that. Now everyone's going to,
I've anticipated could be a possibility. Yeah.
I think it. Yeah, I think you're going to slowly move the needle. Like, as you show more and more people how this works, the PSYOP will start to lean towards our favor where it gets obvious. So it could be that, it could be something with 2020, and they could start to reveal 2020, and we know that it's their last chance to keep power. So, what event could it be? Could organize riots, something to stop that. We've been seeded with the that's why we pointed out that narrative about the cyber attacks and the EBS and all that which General Flynn put a laser pointer on. Like, might we get something like that where we get a disruptive outage for a day that screws up planes and everything else, and then we come to find out it was a domestic insurrection and Trump's got any one or any combination thereof. Yeah, that's why I think it's just something that we have to kind of, keep an eye on the narrative, keep an eye on the comms. And to your point before, Dave said, Patriot said, no, we're not saying, we're just pointing out what we're seeing.
We're spitballing right now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really what's going on here. I mean, Dave and I, we like to spitball together a little bit, but with the full understanding that that's exactly what we're doing. I mean, but what we're talking about here, the big takeaway, the most important aspect of these repeated psyops is what you just described so well. It's really all about getting the public to be able to recognize what's really going on versus the optics that they're being presented with. I think that's ultimately the game here, which is, I mean, to get everyone or a vast majority of the public, maybe not to the level of the discussions that we're having, because we've been so seasoned in looking at these psyops and being able to sort of reverse engineer them. I don't think that's necessarily the goal, but rather to get a vast majority of the people out there to look at what's happening on TV and have the penny drop, like, oh, wait a minute. They're doing this in order to distract from all of their other crimes. Like it was really, this was probably the clearest example of that. These flare-ups that we've seen where, like I said, where you see civil unrest, the Insurrection Act gets mentioned, and then it kind of goes away for a while. And then there's another flare-up. But this was probably the clearest, most obvious one, because like you mentioned, Nick Shirley, when you go back and you revisit the very simple sequence of events, the timeline. Nick Shirley puts out a viral video about the quality learning centers, and hundreds of millions of people, get exposed to all this. And then lo and behold, it's like, boom, Renee Good, boom, Alex Pretty, to give them the pretext to have this chaos in the streets. And I think that a lot of people were probably able to connect those dots this time and say, well, gee, isn't that, I mean, they might still be looking at Alex Pretty and Renee Good and saying, well, I'm not so sure about that. Maybe ICE wasn't acting the way that they should have. Maybe it could have been prevented. I'm not suggesting that those conversations have gone away, because they certainly haven't. But there's also that element of people where they're thinking to themselves, well, isn't it interesting that all of this seems to be happening on the heels of the exposure of this massive fraud to the tunes of billions and billions of dollars, especially after everything that we've been front loaded with in terms of Doge. I mean, the whole first part of 2025 was all about that exposure. And then they kind of, they left it for a while. They put that on the back burner. Then it comes back to the front burner with Nick Shirley. And then within a matter of a couple of weeks, you've got like full-blown riots going on in Minneapolis. So I think that's really the point, is to get the public to be able to connect the dots. And so when they see it, they can say to themselves, yeah, I mean, they may not recognize that it's a movie. And in fact, I don't think that they will, because that would be counterproductive, but they'll certainly be able to recognize at a certain point that the reason that this is playing out, the reason that the blue city governors and leadership are pulling these levers and in basically inciting an insurrection, is to hide their own crimes, to distract the public from what they're being implicated.
Yeah.
On.
Meanwhile, in reality, it's having the opposite effect. It's having the Streisand effect.
Well, yeah, right. That's what I mean. And that's it's brilliant. It's brilliant.
Yep.
All right, man. Well, we're past 2 hours now. I think we could maybe do like one more segment here, and then we can kind of wind it down a little bit. I know you know a lot about the financial world, and so every time we get together, I'm always like, okay, what can I ask Dave here that centers around what's going on with the markets? And obviously, we've seen market manipulation of like biblical proportions go on. I mean, and this is not just pertaining to gold and silver, but it's also in crypto as well. I mean, Bitcoin is like bleeding out, and very interesting that this is happening on the heels of some of the stuff that was in the Epstein files, pointing to Epstein being involved in the funding of Bitcoin's core development, and even taking it a step further, that he was actually tasked with going after certain other digital currencies, specifically XRP and XLM, that they viewed as an existential threat to the banking system. So that's going on with crypto. And then it also appears that the Clarity Act is stalled for the moment. They're having this big ongoing stalemate over stable coin yields. Like the banks are fighting against that because they don't want massive exodus of people taking their money out of the banks and putting them in stable coins where they can actually earn yields. So there's a lot of stuff going on as far as that goes. But I wanted to really focus on the market manipulation going on specifically with precious metals, which I happen to believe, again, and I know you agree with me here, that the white hats are in full control of the financial system. And just like everything else that we talk about, this is part of the movie, being scripted to expose the various different corrupt elements of the fiat debt prison system. And more specifically, I guess in this case, like how the market makers, if you will, maneuver to fortify their positions, more specifically their short positions in paper silver. And remember, Trump has told us many, many times that the entire system is rigged, stock market's rigged, et cetera. And now people are being shown gradually how this manipulation actually works, likely ahead of some sort of a major financial event. Let's just call it an event that will be necessary, because you and I have talked about this. A lot of folks out there, that's really going to be the tipping point for them. That's what's going to actually wake them up, is when they can't get access to their money, or their financial their financial access to all of their different assets gets interrupted. So having said all that, what's your basic take on what's playing out across the financial spectrum? What can you offer us in terms of insight, in terms of what the white hats are up to here?
Well, I think you kind of nailed the setup. I think there's, we kind of all came to the conclusion watching the narrative that as we transition into 2026, we are going to see a lot of different things happening in the financial markets, and it certainly hasn't disappointed. Like you highlighted quite a few of them. Not the least of which being the appointment of a new pro crypto Fed chair, which I don't know any world where the Fed would actually want a pro crypto guy as the chair, but that's what they're going to get, right? So add that to the list of things. But in reality, just to keep it high level, what you're really seeing right now is the purposeful devaluation of the dollar. Now, unfortunately, that's something that you've gotten clues from Trump on. He was just asked in Iowa last week when he was in that factory, like, do you think the dollar's dropped too much? He's like, no, it's perfect.
Yeah.
Now, he has to do that. It's another one of those optics things that he has to do, because unfortunately, most people don't understand how financial markets work. If you ask the average person out on the street, like, hey, if the dollar dropped 30%, would that be good or bad? They'd be like, no, that's bad. Well, in this case, it's actually good, because Donald Trump, this all goes to setting the stage to reset the entire global financial system. Now, I don't claim to know exactly what that's going to look like. We'll have our theories. I think everyone's going to take everything that somebody says with a grain of salt, because I don't believe anyone knows exactly what it's going to look like, other than it likely will include, metals and rare earth minerals, depending on what country you're in.
Right.
But beyond that, I'm not going to sit there and speculate. I have a real problem with people that say, I know exactly what's going to happen on this date. They're going to flip the switch.
No.
With all due respect. Sorry, noted, but okay. Yeah. But what they're doing right now, the dollar is down almost 10% year to date. And that's been a big reason why you've seen the run in metals. Obviously, there's other factors going into it: lack of inventory, shortages, things like that. The paper
And
manipulation,
demand too. I mean,
and
silver.
demand is through the roof. Yeah, it's ironic that silver right now is trading down near the $60-something mark, or wherever it is as we do this, 72.30. That's a hell of a discount, because the reality of it is as that's happening, there's shortages of physical silver everywhere. So, but going back to the dollar real quick, the important thing to understand is, if you go back a few years, Donald Trump kept reminding everybody how China had been devaluing their currency in order to make trade more attractive, right? Obviously, if China devalues their currency, then us as Americans that are buying goods over there and or paying people to manufacture with a weaker yen, that makes our dollar go further in China. So it's easier for the world's companies to go and do business over there. So they were purposely, and he used to talk about this all the time, they were purposely manipulating their currency down to encourage trade and basically steal our jobs and our business and everything else. Well, that's essentially what Trump is doing as well now, although not be it as egregious, right? He's trying to actually purposely get the value of the dollar down, which is allowing the tariffs to come to take hold, and of course, make it a lot more attractive for everyone to manufacture over here. So that's a big piece of what's going on right now. That, again, he can't come out and sit there and go on Fox and say, "Oh, I'm devaluing the dollar," because unfortunately, people don't know how it works. But if you look around and listen to some of the people that really analyze this for a living and understand just even that basic fact, that's what's going on. As far as the markets, I mean, I think I think they're pulling the rubber band back right now on everything, on equities, on bonds, on treasuries, on metals. And as the dollar is coming down, there's the other factor at play, which is he's been screaming about interest rates for a long time. The interest rates are too high. He basically said, I'm paraphrasing, once this guy comes in, you're going to see interest rates drop very quickly. Well, you drop interest, he's going to put this guy in, he's going to drop interest rates. That's going to inject a whole bunch of liquidity into the market, and you're going to see everything start to shoot back again. But yeah, as far as the metals, if you want to throw that slide up right there, the one with the two little things on it. Sure. This is what we were pointing out last Thursday. It's not a coincidence to me that General Flynn, out of the blue, last Thursday, General Flynn does not talk in general about financial markets, certainly doesn't talk about silver and gold. He's got other things to worry about. Yeah. But Thursday, just as silver was crossing over $120 an ounce, out comes Flynn with, hey, this naked short selling is a national security threat. We have to face, this has to end. And he was retruthing this Busy Brands, which is talking about how Wall Street is running a masterclass and selling things that don't exist, whether you're looking at silver or, 2 hours after that, silver took a dive from 117 to 110. It bounced back. And then over the next day, it crashed all the way back down into the 80s, the 70s. The largest, and gold, right? The two of them had the largest single day drop in history, or at least since I think there was one other big one back in the 80s. So it's no coincidence to me that they drew everybody into silver and gold. It actually made it onto the mainstream media. Powell was asked about it. A lot of people probably bought in at the $100 mark or whatever. And sure. I know this audience was more like, I bought some at 100. I sold some. I bought some, like whatever. But where they got people, and again, for time purposes, I'm not going to show it. I've already played this video. I'm sure you've seen it too. Is they got the new investors that maybe don't know what your audience and my audience does, right? We don't care what the price is. We're stacking just to stack because we believe the end goal is a lot higher. But to the retail investor that maybe might have taken a large amount of their savings or something out of a retirement, or maybe they were day trading and they chased that silver run. They bought in at 100 and they're like 120, I'm up 20%, and then bang, it crashed down. They all got on X and social media. And they're like, they all learned the game of the rigging. Yep. They all got to see it in real time. And then it started coming out that JP Morgan was writing naked shorts on silver they didn't have. They had their short position was somewhere in the 80s and 70s. So they had to push it back down from 120 all the way to 80, which if you look at the chart, when you see something go straight down, you don't need to be a market expert to know that can't happen. That's not retail investors. That doesn't happen organically.
That's
That can only
coordination.
happen with coordination and computer programming, and everyone got to see it. And then it came. So to me, I don't look at it. Oh, we all lost a lot of money. Doesn't matter. It's an opportunity to buy more. And if you don't have money to buy more, they already showed you where it could go. That's what I see going on. And then again, for time purposes, I won't play it. But you also had a very, very important thing go on Monday, where JD Vance, again, this got buried in the news cycle between all the other stuff happening. But JD Vance gave a speech at a summit about rare earth minerals. And he specifically spoke about putting price floors on rare earth minerals and critical minerals. And by the way, the United States is the only country in the world right now that identifies silver as a critical mineral. So as this is crashing, as they're manipulating the prices, here's JD Vance sitting there saying, we're eventually going to put a way to put negotiated floors on rare earth minerals. And I think that all goes into ultimately at some point where we believe this new financial system is going to go, where we have oil and certain minerals and other places around the world. If you notice, everywhere Trump has gone, when there's tariffs involved and stuff, there's been some mention of negotiations around rare earth minerals. And I believe that is ultimately a part of whatever this new financial system is going to be like, getting places like Zimbabwe and Nigeria and these places that have a lot of resources, but have a dollar that's been a currency, I should say, that's been manipulated artificially down by the central bank. I believe this all connects to getting those valuations to the right levels, so that at some point, we have a more level playing field, which Trump spoke about that in 2017. He said it's got to be 1-to-1. He said, and it's going to happen a lot sooner than people think. Those are his words in 2017. So I think all that ties together.
Fascinating. Yeah. Well, I wonder about that too. I've been questioning that about the rare earth minerals, if there's actually a monetary element to that, because it's so often that conversation comes up in the national security type of thing, in that context of like Greenland, or just in terms of industrial demand and so on and so forth. But I'd been kind of curious about that, whether there was some financial underpinnings going on there, where whatever the new financial system is going to look like. I personally believe that we're going to be going back to a metals backed system. I think you probably agree with that. But again, how that's how that's actually going to play out, the timeline, it's it's going to be very interesting to see how they unwind all of this stuff, because again, optically, what Trump is doing is you'll recall we previously had conversations about this where I had speculated and I said, at a certain point in time, we're going to start hearing Trump hinting at or giving some sort of a signal that we're going back to a constitutional money, that we're going to have a monetary policy shift. And from what I've been able to see so far, at least on the surface, is it appears as if he's propping up the fiat dollar. And I mean, even when we went into Venezuela and basically got all this oil, it's sort of, it appeared on the surface as if like he's just trying to strengthen the petrodollar, and again flex the U.S. muscle, because we know that the fiat dollar was largely backed by U.S. military force, etc. So I've been kind of curious to see where that pivot is going to come. Is it going to? Are we going to have some sort of a major financial event that eclipses even what we've seen so far, in order to prompt that conversation? And I'm curious. I mean, am I missing anything? Have you heard Trump make any sort of suggestions or signal that that's the direction we're headed, or do you have do you think he's optically just trying to prop up the fiat dollar for the time being? What's your view on that?
Yeah, I think he's playing the fiat game until it's not there anymore. So that's why I think he's allowing the dollar to devalue 10% this year. I don't know that we need to crash the dollar. Yeah, I don't know that we need to crash the dollar necessarily. Like, could that happen? Yeah, I guess. Could there be a something in the markets? Sure. None of that would surprise me, and that's why I try not to make predictions. Everyone's got to do what they feel is best.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody knows. It absolutely wouldn't surprise me if the stock market crashed. There's Peter Schiff, and he's an alarmist, but he's been out there saying, a lot of people have been saying it. You got a lot of look that. I just saw before right here. In fact, just before we came on the air, let's not lose sight of the commercial real estate market, which I've been talking about for 3 years now. Yeah. Let me see if I can get this to pull up real quick. There was a headline here. Yep. Chicago office tower sells at an 87% discount to pre-COVID prices. So for those of you that don't know, commercial real estate, the way you value commercial real estate is based on the cash flow, meaning the rent roll. So if you don't have tenants, the value of the building crashes. Well, that's what we've been seeing happening everywhere. Think about it, guys. The average house in this country has gone up over 60% since 2020. And here you have a office tower in the middle of downtown Chicago that's selling for 87% less than it did 6 years ago. And that's happening all over the place. Well, why is that important? Because a lot of this commercial real estate is owned by investment funds, BlackRock, Vanguard, Fidelity, whatever. Like, there are entire funds that a lot of their money is tied up in commercial real estate. They lose that money, they might need to pay other investors. That there are also derivatives in the financial markets that are written to hedge against commercial real estate, meaning commercial real estate crashes, they can't make their the fund gets hit, some of these other derivatives. So there's a lot of different factors. Any one of them at any given point could cause a problem. So I'm not making, I don't want to, I don't think anyone knows. The entire thing is so rigged. Silver, when it went to 120, a lot of people will tell you it should have already crashed all the derivatives. It didn't. So somebody's propping something up somewhere. So it's not as easy as just to use traditional fundamentals and say, look, for all these reasons, we should have already had a stock market crash worse in 2008. Yeah, we should have, except there's algorithms involved. And nothing works the way it's supposed to anymore. So it's not very easy to tell you this is what's going to happen. That's why so many people have been wrong on everything.
Yeah.
So my simple answer is diversify yourself, be ready for anything. Realize that there's no way with the control that's put in place. The White Hats are not going to set this up to have, if we have another a real 1929 style event and 80% of the people are wiped out, does that make any sense given what we've just lived through for the last 10 years? Like, do you think that's the end game? Like, hey, we're going to take down the 1%. We're just going to redistribute that to another 1% that knew about these. No, that's not what it's about. So, I think we just have to be prepared. And as far as what Trump is doing, I think we got to really keep our eyes in the next couple months on the Fed news, on the current, on the dollar itself, on the markets, and also keep in mind we never got that audit of Fort Knox either.
No,
I have a feeling that may come back around too. And lastly, look, there's no bigger signal he's given you. Like, have you noticed that he didn't just cover the entire White House in gold? Like, he didn't just do that. He started putting some up. And then, like, the next week you come back and there's more. The month after that, there's more. And there's more. Like, that is all. But then he puts it on the outside along the portico. And then he put the signs, like, they're telling you. I think that's a calm that from the first day he got in there, it's like every month they keep adding more gold to the White House. I think that is absolutely signal. It's like the more gold you see, the closer we are to the actual golden age.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great point. I mean, I certainly know. I mean, in terms of comms, the gold, and also Fort Knox, which you mentioned, which kind of went away. Talk about back burner. I mean, people like scratching their heads, like, whatever happened to that? I remember that. But the big question of, what's it going to take and how are we going to arrive? Because that's a pretty, that would be an absolutely seismic event, to have us go back on the gold standard, or even some sort of a variation of that, to go back, like, to have gold and silver. But it would seem,
Patriot, real quick, I'm sorry, I'm thinking out loud. I apologies for interrupting you. Just one more thing on that. because I think you bring up a good point. Like one of the things is we have to get through an education period where we expose the Fed, right? Like the same way you had to expose USAID, and you have to expose the Soros-funded things, and you had to expose Epstein. You have to you can't fix any of the problems without exposing it. So there's going to be some kind of like D-class and education process on the Fed.
Yeah.
But realistically, at the end of the day, do you need to, like, if I'm not saying it's going to happen this way, but if Trump stood up tomorrow or Congress stood up tomorrow, I could see it happening by a bipartisan congressional bill. And they said, hey, we just passed the bill. We're returning to the gold standard. Would anybody complain?
No, I don't think anybody would complain. Right? It would take a lot of people by surprise. But yeah, I mean, it's.
Sure. I'm just thinking at it from the other side.
I think we're calamity type of a thing to play out. In other words,
I think we're going to need some events to take place to educate people. But then, it's not like the voter fraud where you still have a lot of TDS out there, and it's going to take something to shake people to their core where they all go along with new elections or whatever it is. But in reality, we could run some psyops and expose the Fed and show people some things. But then at the end of the day, like this country is so ill-educated when it comes to fiscal policy. If somebody said we're going to back the currency with gold, like who's going to say no?
Yeah,
no, I don't like that.
Yeah, other than the Fed, other than the central bank, like nobody has any objections to that. There really doesn't seem to be. I mean, and I'm not as well versed as you and many other people out there on financial matters, but there doesn't seem to me to be very much of a downside to going back on a gold standard. I mean, sure, it's much more in my sort of layman's understanding, it's much more rigid, but that's really the whole point, is that it keeps the monetary system honest, as opposed to them just being able to print money out into oblivion. And I believe that a solid portion of the education process, absolutely, that's first and foremost. But I would venture to say that a solid portion of the public is pretty well aware of the fact that our currency really isn't backed by anything. Right? Again, they can just continue to print money, and certainly the debt, the national debt, gets publicized often enough that folks are aware that there is a fundamental problem here, we have basically a debt-based currency, a debt-based system. And if you want to believe that debt still exists, I mean, you don't have to be a mathematician to figure out that it's never, ever going to get paid off. Right. So, I mean, all the talk about tariffs and, taking in all of this revenue and being able to sort of grow our way out of the debt, which is the way that Trump is presenting it. I don't know. To me, it seems like there probably wouldn't be a whole lot of objection from people if it was presented to them and saying, look, we need to pay off the debt. And Trump actually mentioned, I'm sure you remember, potentially paying off the debt with cryptocurrency. But however they choose to play that out, I don't really think people are going to be opposed to the idea of having an honest money system where you can actually know that your dollars are backed by physical gold. So, well, Dave, this has been a great conversation, man. As per usual, we're 2.5 hours in, and time to kind of wind things down. Once again, I had a couple of different rants up here, but they disappeared on me, which is unfortunate. I did screen cap one of them from Shungite 62, $17 rant. A thank you for Patriot Underground. She says, this person says, now that David Becker, is a sponsor of yours, has saved me some serious money, I can be generous. Well, thank you.
Glad to hear.
And where we go one, we go all. She says, hi, Dave. Thank you, too. And then there were a couple others, folks. I'm still trying to figure out this issue that I'm having here with getting my rants to not disappear in the middle of the show. I'll probably look into that a little bit. But anyway, just give you the opportunity read yours as well.
Yeah, I would say everyone be patient. I know Rumble. I've been on a couple of calls with Rumble. They do have a whole new back end system coming out in the next few weeks, and there's a bunch of glitches that go with it. Same thing happened to me the other day. I lost them all in the middle of the
Did you?
show. So, yeah. So, guys, I know that I saw some people having some issues with streams freezing and things like that. I promise you, Rumble's aware of it. I can't say enough good things about, in particular, Michael and Dylan that I work with directly. Those guys are literally, I have their cell phone number. I could text them any time of night and they'll get back to me. They really are making a really good effort to make it a better user experience for everybody. It's going to be worth it in the end. So we're all dealing with the issues. Just bear with it. Let me read what I have here. Again, same thing. If I missed anybody, I do apologize. I'm reading what I have on the screen here. And I promise you, guys, no matter what, we greatly appreciate everything you guys do. I got Denise Volbracht in here. $5 rant. As patriots, we should be creating, not waiting. We create our reality. We got this. Waiting is for normies. Your savior is in the mirror. Time to take control of your future. Amen, Denise. Well said. And one more from Denise. Didn't they say today the EU had fixed 9 countries' elections in Europe? I believe that's what I heard. Moldova, Croatia, etc. I didn't hear that. Did you? I'll have to double check that.
Yeah, no, I didn't hear that.
It'll be interesting news if it's true. Thank you, Denise. Alexis Sampson, $1 rant, says, God bless. Thank you. Denise Volbrack, elevating our consciousness reveals all truths above the false narratives. In my opinion, we are here to realize, with true realize, the real lies. Elevating consciousness, our time to elevate humanity. Thank you, Denise. And let me just double check. I think I saw one more here. Another disenfranchised. Let me just try and talk properly. Another disenfranchised YouTuber, $34. Thank you. Great show, guys. Love you. Thank you, my friend. And let me also thank you, Carrie, Cat, Claudia, Doug, Magadai 1776 for their help in the chat. Thank you guys so much.
And likewise, yeah, Penny Lane 51. Of course, she knows that I love her. But Penny, thank you so much for being such an incredible mod. And indeed, I just want to thank everybody out there for listening. We had an excellent audience, as we always do. I think at a peak, we had well over 6,500 people tuning in tonight. So thank you. We really do appreciate that. And I have to say, every time we get together, it's always an adventure. We never really quite know where the conversation is going to go. Tonight, we focused a lot more on sort of like the I guess we veered a little bit away from some of the topics that we normally get into, which is kind of like like I mentioned at the beginning of the show, like the psychological toll that it's taken on all of us, and basically just talking about that angle. But I really enjoyed this conversation. We covered an awful lot of stuff. So Dave, I'll just give you the opportunity to leave us with some final words tonight before we part ways, and then we'll be back again in a couple of weeks. So.
Amen, brother. Let me just quickly thank SPS Ryan, popped in last minute. $20 rant. Excellent show, fellas. 2 of the best. Thank you, my friend. Yeah, Patriot, I couldn't agree more. It's like any other routine, certain things can become monotonous at times. So like some of the other shows, which I still love doing, don't get me wrong, but it's nice to rather than doing like a normal show where we're going through 20 clips and different slides and comms and everything else. I think it's an awesome change of pace to come in here and do something where we can just sit here and pick a few top of mind issues and just have a good deep intelligent conversation on it. It's so easy to do. I think we were talking before about speculation. And I think one of the things I enjoy most about being involved in this movement is the fact that we don't know. We don't know. And so when I get together with somebody that's as eloquent and brilliant as you are, it's just great to have these conversations where we sit here and just kind of spitball. I think that's so important in terms of like keeping us engaged and keeping our minds open and being prepared for anything and looking at things from different angles. If you sit at a computer for 18 hours a day by yourself, just trying to dig into this stuff, you can easily get pigeonholed into one line of thinking. So I think it's important to get together and have these conversations. I know it helps me a ton. And again, I think it's a great way for people to, I know a lot of people say they enjoy finishing off the night this way. It's a good conversation that people can listen to rather than having to, be reading a million different things on the screen. So I always enjoy doing this. I look forward to it every couple of weeks. And what can I say? Especially if you guys are coming in late, you didn't see the beginning of the show. We did kind of an entire conversation on people seeing what an impact that this entire latest narrative with Epstein and Pizzagate has made. I encourage you guys to go back, because I know many people have been waiting for that day where you could truly say, "I told you so." We have crossed the Rubicon in many ways with this one. When you have Bill Maher going on a national radio show saying he owes an apology to QAnon, you are living in a very different world than you were 5 years ago. So embrace it, enjoy it. Like I said to my friends last night who were making the jokes about apologizing to conspiracy theorists, I said, yeah, there's going to be a whole lot more of that coming. So thank you as always for hosting, Patriot.
Yeah, man, it's a pleasure for me, man. I have to say, everybody that I work with, there's a different kind of flavor to the conversation, and every conversation is different too. I think the way that we approach it is we have a general idea of what we want to get into, but the conversation ultimately kind of just becomes an organic thing that we just flow with it. And we've always done a really great job working together. And I think that you have so many great points, so many amazing insights that, when I hear you talk, it triggers a thought, and then we can just kind of continue to bounce things off of each other. And I value that. I really do. And I know that the audience does as well. And I appreciate all your kind words, my friend, indeed. So thank you, everybody. And indeed, like Dave was saying, enjoy the moment, relish this moment, because we may not be across the finish line yet, whatever that looks like, however that's going to play out. But I've been saying this more and more to my audiences, that we really have to take the time to celebrate our victories as they're happening, and not get so focused on whatever it is that we're projecting into the future that we lose sight of how far we've come. And this is actually a conversation that you and I have had before. Essentially just measuring all of the progress and the things that are playing out right now. I mean, you just mentioned Bill Maher. My goodness, if you go back a year ago and we were talking about Bill Maher offering a public apology to QAnon, that would have absolutely been just blown people's minds. And you've made the point so many times. It's like we get conditioned as well, because we've been subjected to these repetitive psyops for such a long time, that after a while, there's kind of like this callus that develops. We get a little bit desensitized to things that are absolutely just monumental. And in a sense, it was kind of the nature of the conversation that I had with Mike King just the other night, like being able to, sure, we all experience the battle fatigue. We all have our moments of peaks and valleys, of the ebbs and flows of this fifth generation war. But my goodness, how easy it is to, at certain points, to forget how far we've come. And that ultimately is what we should be all collectively just taking a moment to reflect upon. Here we are in February of 20. And by the way, 2026 has been a banger so far. My goodness, all this stuff has happened, and we're only 1 month into the year. But here we are in 2026 after all of these years on this journey together, and just look at the nature of the conversation and how it's changed, how it's evolved, and what it's grown into. And this is really just the beginning. But like Dave said, we really have crossed that Rubicon. And with this latest Epstein file drop, again, I would echo that sentiment. If you came in late, make sure you go back and listen to that, because I think we did a pretty good job at capturing how significant this was. So I'll leave it there in the interest of time. But love you guys. Dave, thank you so much, brother. Always an honor to have you on. I'm already looking forward to the next one. And do you want to mention any shows you got coming up? You have much more of a set schedule than I do, but I don't know if there's anything you wanted to.
Yeah, if guys are interested, I saw a lot of questions coming across. That's why we do our Friday night call-in show. That'll be tomorrow night live, 7 p.m. Eastern. I will have our good friend Paul Fleuret, aka Absolute 1776, And our good friend Space Shot will be co-hosting to take your calls 7 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. Thanks again, my friend.
All right. Awesome. Yeah. And I'm actually going to be on, I think it's next week. I just spoke to Stormy. I'm going to be on Absolute Storm, I think next Thursday night. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Always an honor to go on with them. And at a certain point, I know we always mention it, but I got to carve out some time on a Friday night to be part of that call-in show.
We'll get it done.
Tons of fun. All right, everybody. Well, thank you so much for listening. We're going to leave it there. Have a wonderful evening. We'll be back soon. God bless. Godspeed, everybody. Patriot out.
Good, everybody.